It gets me every time, like loading into this game. I don't know how many times I've played it now, but the opening scene still blows me away even now.
Hi, my name is Gabe Newell, and welcome to Half-Life Alyx. To say this product was a challenge would be an understatement. It's our first Half-Life title in over 10 years, and it's our first one in virtual reality. In addition to it being a great VR experience that still felt like a Half-Life game, we wanted Half-Life Alyx to serve players who've been waiting to find out what happens after Episode 2, and at the same time, provide an on-ramp to anyone who hasn't played a Half-Life game at all. Ultimately, whether we succeeded in any of that is up to you to decide. But hopefully, this commentary mode will give you some insight into the set of problems we faced and how we chose to tackle them. To listen to a commentary node, pick up the floating hologram of a radio headset in front of you and simply put it on your head. Once you're done listening to the commentary, you can take the radio headset off or simply put on the next one. Please let me know what you think. I can be reached at gaben@valvesoftware.com. While I'm unable to reply to all the emails I receive, I do read them all, and they're a critical part of the feedback we use to evaluate our work. Thanks, and have fun.
Awesome! So the moment you log in, you get Gaben himself having a bit of a chat with you and introducing the whole commentary mode. Very, very cool stuff. Right, let's jump into Steam quickly, and then I'm going to launch a desktop view. Now, Steam's come with this new functionality that's pretty cool, where you can dock desktops. So here we go. So dock on the left controller. Nice. Now, theoretically, I should be able to see you guys. So let me just put on chat view here. There we go. Maybe if I pop out chat as well, that might help. If I go down here, I can see you guys as well. Nice. Okay. So one other thing we need to do as well is we just need to sort out the snap turning as always. We're going to make that continuous turn. And we're good to go. So I can see you guys in VR with me and play the game. So let's do it. So we know the drill. Let's throw a can at the cat as always. See you later, cat. Right. And pick up our first introduction node.
As in the case of any Half-Life game, the first hour of Alyx must convey a lot of information to the player, hopefully in a natural and entertaining way. Players need to know who they are, where they are, what kind of world they're in, who the other important characters and factions are, and so on. At the same time, they need to learn how to actually play the game. How do they move? What can they interact with and how? What should they be trying to do, etc. Figuring out exactly what information we would try to convey in these first two levels, and how it would be conveyed, took us over 2 years of playtesting.
2 years?
It's tempting to try and include everything we think a player should know, but all information has a priority, and the more we include, the more chance there is that a player misses something important because they're distracted or confused by something less important. So over the next 2 levels, we'll use commentary nodes to point out some of the specific places where we grappled with conveying information to the player. In between these nodes, you'll likely be able to spot many other examples for players to find, if they're interested in paying closer attention and understanding more.
Okay, nice. So I think that's Robin Walker, one of the lead developers on the game. So again, giving you a nice little introduction. I wonder how many nodes there's going to be. This playthrough could take about a year, I think. Right then, we got the Citadel Vista. Let's have a little listen to this one.
One of the pieces of important information we struggled to convey was exactly when Half-Life Alyx is set within the series timeline. Whilst we tried to reflect it carefully in many of the world details, it was never 100% successful during playtests. Eventually, we decided it was too important to be left to the players to figure out, and so we put it in our opening text crawl. The Citadel's incomplete state did provide us with an early opportunity to reinforce the timeline visually. Half-Life Alyx takes place 5 years before the events of Half-Life 2, in which the towering Citadel represents the Combine seat of power. As we see here, however, early Combine infrastructure is a cluttered mess of cables and unusual structures sprawled all over the city, surrounding the Citadel's construction, and served as a useful indicator of the time frame. We went on to reinforce this impression in other places throughout the following level. Combine architecture tends to be abstract in scale and form, so we included some familiar visual cliches of human construction: the large external scaffolds, some distinction of floor levels, rows of small lights, and the tidying of the silhouette into more structured vertical elements, trying to strike a balance between capturing the alien nature of the Citadel whilst grounding its construction in enough familiarity to better understand its size and state. Large, sweeping vistas such as this one proved an interesting challenge in virtual reality. Their distance from the viewer means they don't benefit from stereoscopic vision the way that small close-up objects do. Because of this, the small objects on the balcony often draw the attention of the players before they've even noticed the imposing structure in the distance. If we moved the Citadel too close, it felt absurdly huge and difficult to take in. Yet placed alone on the horizon, it felt two-dimensional and flat. We found the solution in filling the space between the viewer and the distant structure with many scale references. The city itself, huge supply cables leading towards the vanishing point, large repeated Combine buildings, heavy pollution fog, careful lighting, and all the animated elements, especially the helicopter whose sound begins in the fade-in. All these were carefully composed to help draw the attention of the player to the Citadel first, before letting their attention wander to take in the details of the city, and settle ultimately on the inviting items here on the balcony.
Wow, that's unbelievable. So they had to play around with perspective because people didn't see the massive, huge Citadel in front of them when they first started playing, and they went straight to the small details. That's quite incredible. Hey Limitless, how you doing? Welcome to the stream. Hope well enjoying the Easter break holiday. Helen and I are both here for you. Oh nice, hello. Welcome. I'll get the stream shared on Twitter in a sec. Hey, no worries, dude. Loudbox, how you doing? Welcome to the stream. I hope you're both good today. Thanks for joining. So we're just starting the Half-Life Alyx Developer Mode, which I've never done before. But you know, it's my favourite game, so I'm just really interested to get some of the insights, some of the things that the developers actually went through. So this is the greenhouse. This is called the greenhouse. It is a greenhouse.
In these first areas of the game, we grappled a lot with the density and prioritization of the information we were conveying to the player. Playtesting showed us that players in VR were easily distracted, often due to better peripheral vision, such that they'd focus on one scene element while losing track of others. This was exacerbated in these first rooms because players were acclimatizing to being in VR, often for the first time. In addition, different players progress at different speeds. We saw some players spend 30 seconds on the opening balcony and others 30 minutes. As a result, we did a lot of iteration over the set of opening areas, each time changing what information we tried to convey and where. Initially, the video call from Eli took place in the later refuge room with the Snark and camcorder, but players were often too engrossed in interacting with all of the detail in that room to pay attention to the conversation between Eli and Russell. We moved the video call out to the starting balcony, but there it distracted from the establishing shot of City 17 and the Citadel. It also came at a time when players were still figuring out core game elements like movement and hand interaction with the world. That collision made simple things hard, like when to show the player a movement tooltip if they immediately started the video call. Eventually, we settled on inserting the greenhouse between the starting balcony and the refuge, which allowed us to move the call to an area with a slightly obscured vista and fewer interactable objects. This avoided the distraction problems and ensured players got past the initial gameplay moments of figuring out their hardware and movement setup. It also had the bonus of allowing us to add further detail to the opening balcony and Alyx's refuge without fear of creating distractions from the video call.
Unbelievable detail. I did wonder why they bothered with having like this whole greenhouse area as well. It's because people in VR get distracted really, really easily, and Valve found that in playtesting.
Alex!
Hope you're good, folks.
It's good, Dad. Metrocop movement is normal.
Good to see you, dude.
Combine patrols.
How's things, Anka?
How's it going in the stockyard?
One combine.
Thank you very much, Limitless. Appreciated.
They're never going to miss it.
It's a very, very chilled playthrough. I'm literally just going to some of the nodes, having a listen, getting some insight into the way the game was coded, that kind of thing.
1 minute and I'm out, guaranteed.
Happy Saturday! Hey! Happy Easter as well. Hello, GR. Welcome, welcome.
That place has been deserted for years.
TTS is not on today just because there's going to be so much chatting going on because I'm listening to the nodes. And also, Steam VR has a new mode where you can dock the window to your controller. So you guys are in VR with me, which is awesome.
Terrific.
Labox, try the Bioshock mod already? Yes, I have. It's amazing. You played the dev tutorial. Cool. I haven't played it. This is the first time that I've done the developer commentary. So I'm really, really intrigued to see, you know, what it's all about. I didn't do it with the other Half-Life games either. This is going to be interesting. Still gets me every time, that leg. Absolutely awesome. Nice. Let's have a little listen and see what the devs say about that Strider then. Let's go.
Beyond conveying critical information about the state of the world, the first 2 levels of Half-Life Alyx also needed to demonstrate some of VR's strengths. Conveying a sense of scale is something VR does much better than flat screens, and our early playtests showed us that nothing quite sold that scale more than seeing a Strider up close.
Oh, hell yeah.
In addition to the visuals, to fully illustrate the scale of a Strider at close range, we needed to do a lot of work on its audio treatment. Players had strong expectations about feeling the weight, power and presence of the Strider through its movements, particularly as it stepped on the balcony the player was occupying. In order to convey this power through sound, we layered multiple sound effects, allowing us to address ranges in the audio frequency spectrum and the temporal nature of those elements.
Oh my god, how much work goes into this? How much work goes into a game? Seriously.
We then combined those elements in the Source 2 audio engine to control them as one sound.
Holy cow. Yeah, I mean, when the Strider puts his foot here, you almost feel the vibration of it. So they definitely did some great audio work with it, I think. Right then, I'm not going to do every single node, or else we're just not going to get through the game at all. But I do want to listen to a few at the beginning, just because it sets the scene of the game.
This room, internally referred to as Alyx's Refuge, was initially the location where the Eli video call took place. However, once that video call was moved out to the balcony, this room was freed up to solve other problems. In the Half-Life series, we've always tried to ensure that there's generally enough narrative for all players to understand where they're going and why, but for players who slow down and pay attention, there's more detail that can lead to a greater understanding. With the balcony being a place to get familiar with the game's inputs, the greenhouse being where the story kicks off, and the Strider there to surprise players with spectacle, we decided that the Refuge could be a quiet moment for players, where they could discover more narrative detail in the environment. At the same time, it could be a place where they can play around a bit more now that they're acclimated to being in VR. Spending time in the Refuge is meant to bring players into Alyx's role in the Resistance and her place in the world. We wanted it to feel like a real stakeout spot, where Alyx had been cooped up for weeks or months while planning the heist, doing research on the Combine. The camcorder, snark, and whiteboards are all toys that respond to detailed interaction and reward deeper investigation, giving curious players more information about the world of City 17 and what Alyx has been doing in it.
I think the first time that I saw this whiteboard with all this detail on this blew my mind a little bit, because it made me realise the detail that Valve wanted to go into with the game. So here, they've literally done like all the observations that Alyx has had out that window, looking at the Citadel. She's made all these notes about it on this whiteboard, which is just incredible when you think about it. Like, I don't think there's many devs out there or many game designers out there that would actually think about going to this kind of minute detail. I mean, that is quite incredible. Right then, let's move on through. So that room was called the Refuge. Interesting.
Alyx, are we good?
Yep, they got the reactor. Easy peasy.
I still think she looks like
I'm
Sandra
headed back to
Bullock.
the safe house right now to meet Dad. Go. We'll be in touch.
Stay safe.
Right then, so out the window, she's called Olga. So let's have a little listen to what they say about her.
Two critical pieces of information that we needed players to understand were simple to state, but not so easy to convey. That players were playing as Alyx Vance, not the Gordon Freeman they've played in all prior Half-Life games, and that Alyx is going to speak, unlike Gordon. These probably seem obvious to you now, but until we focused on them, it wasn't obvious to playtesters. Ensuring that everyone realized they were playing as Alyx was something we decided to hit with the biggest hammer we could, and name the product after her. But even with that, we were very careful in Eli's video call to ensure it's reinforced immediately. Olga, the character introduced here, was added to further drive it home by calling out when the player exits the elevator. Olga is the first character the player meets in person, and her dialogue here, and again ahead in the alley, is aimed at driving home the fact that she's conversing with the player, and that the disembodied female voice the player hears is Alyx speaking back. This was harder to convey in Eli's video call, because it already features Russell speaking off-screen, whereas in this scene, there's clearly no one else around in the conversational space other than Olga and the player. Without Olga, we found that, even though they had already spoken to Eli and Russell over the video call, playtesters still didn't feel like they were Alyx.
What? How can you not feel like you're playing Alyx? As I say, like, the game is named after her. I personally, when I took the video call from Russell, for me personally, I felt like I was Alyx at that point. So, I don't know, quite interesting to see that the playtesters didn't hear that. Right, I'm going to leave that one alone and kind of move on through, I think. And I'm just going to pick some nodes that I think I'd find interesting. So there's Combine, getting people of the Resistance. Let's have a little listen to this.
The remainder of this level is designed to continue informing the player about the world they're in.
Brings back some great memories of playing this for the first time. Oh, hell yeah. Really does. She's a throwaway character. She is ANCAP, yeah.
That becomes much harder later on, once the player has a weapon. This was tricky to design due to the challenge we're often faced with, the friction between narrative state and gameplay state. Here, the narrative implies that Alyx should be making her way back to Eli as quickly and quietly as possible. But gameplay-wise, we're at the start of the game, and players are still testing the limits of everything they can see and touch. Unsurprisingly, playtesting showed us that some players would dedicate themselves to following the narrative and quickly move through the area, while others would completely ignore the narrative and explore every nook and cranny. While it's tempting to simply remove all distractions in an attempt to unify all players towards following the narrative, it would send the wrong signal about the density of our world and how the game intends to reward players for exploring it. So we spent months refining this section, adding, changing, and removing elements. We tried to find the right level of narrative tension, where players felt like they should be moving along, but not so quickly that they can't stop to tinker with something. We put in enough interactive objects and narrative moments where players were always rewarded for looking around, but we designed all those distractions to end quickly, so we could encourage players to continue moving along.
Okay, so again, the alleyway was just another way of players getting used to using VR. And I think Valve needed to do this, kind of have like this slow build up. And the reason for that is the world is so detailed. And there's not many worlds that have been built like this in VR before Half-Life Alyx. So when you first load into the game and you start walking around, it blows your mind a little bit. So you want to start playing around with things to see what you can interact with. And I guess that's kind of what the devs are saying. But yeah, it definitely brings back memories. of the very first time you play the game, kind of hearing how they've decided to approach the levels. There's got to be a narrative node here. Amazing. Come on, where's the heads at? I want to hear about that ship. What? Oh, that's a shame. How have they not got a narrative node there? Into the elevator we go.
Whoa, wait, I just live here.
Probably anti-citizen. Keep those hands up.
Anti-citizen.
Don't shoot.
Dad!
Didn't steal anything. No one! I didn't see anyone!
Dad! Hey, wait!
Don't
no,
do
no,
that! Do you like the acting there? I thought I'd play along, get into the role, that kind of thing. Itchy nose. I think the narrative node in Russell's apartment is going to be amazing because there's so much detail in that, and you can tell that Valve learned so many lessons why they were making this, and that playtesting was like the key part of it. Like the balcony scene, they tested that. They playtested that for like 2 years. Before they got it right. That's unbelievable. And that's just the very first start of the game.
Where are you taking me?
Van crash.
Where's my
In order
father?
to limit the possibility of motion sickness that could be induced by moving the player in a vehicle, we initially wrote this scene to have Alyx wake up after the van had already crashed. Players found this underwhelming, however, since the game seemed to be needlessly holding back an exciting moment that they could have experienced for themselves. Addressing this meant that we had to tackle the technical problem of moving the player comfortably in a vehicle. In this van, and in the train at the end of the map, you'll notice that the outside world is only visible through small windows. These outside views are necessary to provide motion parallax, but the small window size ensures that the player's field of view is always dominated by the vehicle interior, which is naturally in the player's own frame of reference. This greatly reduces the occurrence of motion sickness. Aside from the parallax of the outside world, we use animated lighting and careful sound design to produce the effect of riding in a vehicle.
Very cool.
You have been in an accident.
Alyx, you there? You've got to get moving.
Russell? I've been in an accident.
I know! I caused it, so technically not an accident. You've got to get moving.
Technically,
where's Dad?
not an accident.
He's fine. Follow the drone.
So, Dad's okay, right?
Yeah, well, no. To be honest, he's trouble.
But
They've still got him. He was in a separate transport.
I've never noticed the cat up
you
there.
saved me?
Well, yes. I had no way of knowing who was in which van, so yes, the result was that I saved you.
Do we know where they're taking him?
Criminal holding, and then, when they realize he's Eli Vance, to Nova Prospect.
Ratty!
I'm already working on a plan to get him back. You're close to my lab. Keep following the drone. We'll figure out what to do.
Right, let's have a little listen to this.
Where the last map was focused on conveying a lot of information about the world state to the player, this map is where we need to start the player's larger quest. That means the player must leave this map with an understanding of what's happened to Eli, and what they're going to do about it. The player also needs to meet Russell, so they have a face behind all the radio dialogue throughout the game. Finally, we need the player to collect the gravity gloves and the pistol and learn how to use them both. This is a daunting list. From experience, we know that if we cram all that into a single scene, players won't be able to remember more than a couple highlights. So this map's purpose is essentially narrative pacing. We need to draw apart the required events separating them with enough time and space that players could ingest and remember them. At the same time, we're a little under the gun. Playtesting showed us that by now, some players have been playing for 30 minutes, and they're wondering when they're going to see some enemies.
Well, that's the crazy thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with that, actually. When I first started playing this game, I was thinking, you know, it's probably about time we started shooting things, because that's what Half-Life is about. And you don't get to that stage for quite some time.
And your dad.
Russell, just hang on. I'm almost there.
Oh, this might be interesting, actually, talking about the playground. You never noticed Cat either, yeah, just at the top there.
In addition to delivering narrative at a
Can you hear the narrative
pace,
okay?
This map needed to continue communicating the state of the world outside of the quarantine zone. We also wanted players to understand when Half-Life Alyx takes place in the larger Half-Life timeline, and to see for themselves the massive scale of the Citadel under construction. The power of the Combine is embodied in their indifference towards humanity. They've conquered Earth with little effort and are now plundering it for their own ends. They put a modicum of effort into their propaganda, but it's ultimately uncaring. Later in Half-Life 2, we see Breen's attempts to talk to humanity with more seriousness, but it's unclear whether that directive comes from the Combine or if it's just Breen's attempts to be useful to them. Meanwhile, the Combine construction is brutally efficient. The Citadel's pervasive feeder cables make no attempt to fit into the lives of the residents as the Combine drains the city of its power. Within this playground, a nostalgic nod to Half-Life 2, this enormous cable has been run right through the mural on the wall, demonstrating the Combine's total lack of interest in the history behind the city.
Oh, that's really true, actually. I never really thought about that. Yeah, like, the Combine really don't give a damn, do they? Run their cables through everything, destroy everything.
Alex, everything cut out for a second. I lost the headset video feed. Can you see my drone? Is it okay?
Sure. Yeah, I'll be there in a minute.
I mean, the sense of scale with that Strider as well is pretty damn incredible. So this is where the main part of the story really starts. And I'm really looking forward to kind of hearing what they got to say about this meeting with Russell. Because it's such a seminal part of the game.
Wait, my drone's okay, right?
Nope, it exploded.
Cool, there's a developer node in here.
Right, good, well, that's the main.
Right, let's listen to Russell, get that bit done, and then we'll listen to some of the commentary.
Russell, they've got Dad.
I know. This is bad. They're gonna find out what he knows, and then, yeah, they're gonna kill him.
Oh, God.
But the good news is, we've got something they don't.
Which is?
My plan to get him back.
Great. Let's hear it.
Now, pretty soon they're gonna realize that your dad is not gonna talk, and when that happens, he's off to have his brain sucked out.
Russell.
Potentially. Maybe not, though. I mean, they could just drill into his... Oh, yeah, still your dad.
So well
What
animated.
they will do is taken by train from here. This is Eli to Nova Prospect.
And if he gets on that train, that's it, right?
Not necessarily. Grab something that represents us. Okay, that's you.
I thought you said us.
Well, one of us, me, will have to stay here for this plan to work.
All right, fair enough.
Just outside, there's a second train that also leads out of City 17 through the quarantine zone.
Okay.
Both trains intersect here at Fairview Junction. You take your train, get there before his train, and hack into the controls. That'll let me take over the system. Train comes to a halt, you deal with the Combine situation, and we get your dad back.
Sounds good. Where's the train I'm taking?
Out the back, through the yard. It's decommissioned, but I think I can hack into its controls. Oh, and get yourself a pair of Russells on the way out.
Russells?
The gloves, Alex. You know, the gravity gloves. I have a few sets through there. You can calibrate them out by the shed.
Got it.
We can do this, Alex.
You know, and that was quite a moment as well.
We could do it, because we're gonna do it.
When he tells us about the gravity gloves. Okay, character choreography or Russell typing. I wonder what this is about. I've never really paid much attention to him typing on this. Let's have a little listen and see what they say. This could be interesting. You can hear the narrative just fine. Okay, thanks, Limitless.
Right from our earliest experiments in VR, we learned that players expect a high level of audio fidelity, even from minute interactions, particularly when the sounds are meant to correspond to clearly observable visuals. For instance, in one of our prior games, it may have been acceptable to use a generic sequence of computer key sounds when Russell was typing. In VR, however, we know that a player can observe the animations very closely, and even put their head right next to Russell's keyboard if they choose. In this case, players would notice a lack of one-to-one correspondence between the key press animation and sound. For Half-Life Alyx, we authored a set of individual key press sounds to be driven by animation. For example, as Russell's fingers animate to press a key, one of these key press sounds is played, resulting in precise synchronization of the animation and sound.
No way. I mean, that's detail, isn't it? Holy cow. The amount of thought behind just typing on a keyboard. Like one character typing on a keyboard. That's ridiculous. This is going to be really interesting as well, character choreography. Because Russell is so well animated.
Russell's laboratory is the first time the player is in the same room as another character, and it highlights one of the main challenges we face when designing choreographed scenes in VR, keeping the player and characters out of each other's space. In previous Half-Life games, we could always forcefully move the player if we really needed them out of the way. We made several attempts at finding a similar solution in VR, but found that it often made players feel deeply uncomfortable or disoriented. So instead, we designed these spaces to allow for a natural separation between the player and our characters. Where natural separators couldn't exist, we had to restrict players from moving into the character's space, removing that limitation as soon as the character had moved out of the way. Another challenge was balancing how often characters respond to player actions while delivering important narrative information. In early experiments, we allowed characters to stop mid-sentence, which allowed them to respond immediately to the player, and then continue on with their dialogue. While technically straightforward, this was incredibly difficult to execute in animation and dialogue without feeling unnatural. The combination of custom reactions necessary to cover the range of possible player interaction and the resulting return to narrative dialogue quickly multiplied out of control. Eventually, we settled on a solution where we allowed only a minimum of interactions during the important narrative delivery sections, and a wider range of responses to more complex reactions after the scene has completed. In the case of Russell, we layer subtle head facing and natural eye contact on top of his performance while he is talking with Alyx. Then, after the scene, when he is typing at the computer, he will respond to players trying to touch him or objects being thrown around.
Really? Does he? I didn't know that. No way! I didn't know that he reacts to you here. Oh, that's clever. That's really clever. It's got like a set. It's canned animation still. That's really quite cool. Nice. Okay, let's get the Russells. I can't believe that he actually continues to react with you even after that kind of scene ends. This will be interesting as well.
Goes. There should be a bunch of junk down there. Aim at something with your hand open. You've got it. Just a little flick of the wrist. You're on it. Great. Try again. That's it. One more time. Just like that. Perfect. We're done. Oh, wait. I almost forgot.
Alyx, up here. You're gonna need a gun. Don't worry, it's unloaded. It's unloaded now. Oh, almost forgot. Guns need ammo. Here you go. Right, heading back to the courtroom.
Cool. This is seriously interesting. Right. Gravity glove training 2. Accidentally dropped that. Okay, let's have a little listen to this one.
One frustration players may encounter in VR is having to physically bend down or reach out for objects in the virtual world, especially if they have limited real-world space. A common
Chomsky!
solution for this is to provide a way to bring objects to the player, instead of forcing the player to go to them. We knew this would be an important feature in Half-Life Alyx, with its sprawling levels and players' desire to explore every corner of the world. We didn't want this mechanic to feel too gamey or magical, so we decided to integrate it into the fiction of the game by making it a feature of the gravity gloves, which are a natural precursor to the gravity gun of Half-Life 2. This allowed us to present the mechanic as a real physical action that's enabled by a piece of in-fiction technology. To emphasize the physicality that is unique to the medium of VR, we used a physical gesture to activate the pull instead of a button press, and then required the player to actually catch the object instead of automatically attaching it to the hand. This made the mechanic feel more natural and rooted in the fiction of the game's universe,
Sorry,
while allowing
Chomsky.
the player to feel powerful and accomplished.
Okay. That's pretty cool. Russell's not giving me any ammo.
Russell, I'm
Oh, there
out.
we go.
Here you go.
Thank you, Russell. Oh. Nice. Grab a Geiger meter, put it in his face. Oh, really? I didn't know that. What happens when you do that? Is Russell radioactive?
Lock then. Good. Great. Did have the key for it, but should have given you that. That's on me.
Right then,
All
on
right,
to level
here we
2.
go. Next stop, Fairview Junction.
I mean, there's quite a few developer nodes and narrative nodes. But I get the general gist of that level. That's pretty cool. Now interested to see how they built the other levels. Like Quarantine Zone. Like what thought process went into building the Quarantine Zone? Because it's so complex. Because you've got all like the alien Zen kind of wildlife there, haven't you? As well as, you know, the kind of layout that humans use. And, you know, people have been sleeping rough in the area as well. Wonder if there's some interesting backstories that went on near the Quarantine Zone. Because the level of detail that Valve have gone into for this game is unbelievable. So I bet there is like a whole load of backstories we know nothing about. Or maybe only the keen-eyed people among us might actually pick
Hello,
up.
Alex. We might have a problem. Probably nothing to worry about, but... Did the train stop? It stopped, didn't it?
Yeah, what happened?
It's jammed. When the Combine shut down the quarantine zone, they must have tightened security.
Which means?
Yeah, you're nowhere near Fairview Junction. You're just outside the QZ. And this is as far as we get by train.
Then I'm headed on foot.
Good. I'll see if I can get you in some other way.
The huge Combine wall that marks out the Quarantine Zone. Sense of scale is off the charts. It's an achievement, is it? Ah, that must be an achievement that I haven't got then. I think I've got about 3 achievements left to get.
I thought the Combine sealed up the QZ.
This one must have squirted out. I've heard they've had trouble with barnacle spores outside the containment area. But not about fellas like this.
Probably not a one-off then.
I doubt it.
Right, let's have a little listen to this one. So this is about resin. This will be really interesting.
Even in our earliest experiments in bringing Half-Life to VR, we found that players enjoyed exploring every nook and cranny of the environment. With the increased fidelity of VR, players not only expected to be able to interact with a vast array of objects, but they also had a strong desire to find something useful from time to time. This was so universal among testers that in addition to more searchable locations and interactive objects, we added a new resource, resin. Level designers could place this new resource in fun and interesting locations that weren't tied to game progression, rewarding players wider-ranging exploration. We also tied this new resource to a longer-term goal in the form of weapon upgrades, further motivating players to explore the environment. Deep scavenger hunts and keen observation would result in more resin to spend as a reward.
Clever. Very clever. And you do kind of get that feeling as you go through the levels that, you know, you want to explore a little bit more. You know, I did find myself like searching through everything on like, I think my second playthrough, I really searched for the resin. Toner puzzles.
Internally, we refer to this type of puzzle as a toner puzzle, due to its similarity to a real-world cable toner tool that can be used to locate electrical wires in walls. The toner mechanic was conceived as a tool for designers to craft player experiences around knowing that the player had to put their head and hands in specific locations. The initial design merely required the player to use their multi-tool to push a ball of energy along a path, similar to a child's bead maze toy. While this simple design was successful at getting the player to put their head and hands in particular locations, the lack of branching meant that the player wasn't required to make any choices, nor was there any possibility of negative consequences. To address these issues, we added the rotating junction elements, which allowed for branching paths and became the player's primary means of interacting with toner puzzles. While the toner puzzles ramp up in complexity throughout the game, this first toner puzzle is designed to use a minimal number of elements to introduce players to the key ideas that power flows through wires, power can be rerouted by rotating junctions, and power has an effect on the physical world, such as turning on lights and opening gates. The sparking electrical outlet that branches down toward the floor is not strictly necessary for this simple puzzle, but it was added here to expose players to its behavior, since it was causing confusion in later puzzles when players were seeing it for the first time in more complex configurations.
Yeah, I do like the puzzles with the multi-tool. I do. Some of them got a little bit too complex for me later on. When we were in the level with the outlines, you get to the end of that level and there's a huge door that's got 3 of these puzzles kind of combined. And I didn't realise that it's a timing puzzle as well. So I was just trying to turn on one junction. There's like 3 of them you have to do. And it's a timing thing, so you had to twist one at the top, twist one in the middle, twist one at the bottom, all within a few seconds of each other to open up the door. And I think on my first playthrough, I spent about half an hour on it because I didn't twig that mechanic. And it wasn't really introduced anywhere else in the game up until that point. So that kind of new twist on those puzzles with the multi-tool took me by surprise. And that's why I struggled with it towards the end. So the puzzles are okay with the multi-tool, but I don't think I'm their biggest fan. Oh yeah, lighting.
From our earliest experiments in VR, we realized how critical high quality, high density lighting was to conveying a sense of realism. In game development, any technology choice involves trade-offs between quality, runtime performance, and development time. For Half-Life Alyx, we chose a high-quality, high-performance light mapping solution, which required a significant amount of offline preprocessing. We performed the light map preprocessing using a render farm, which could take several hours for a single map at the highest quality, and we put a lot of effort into mitigating the cost of that high iteration time for designers on the team. Specifically, we implemented a real-time approximation to the final lighting result, which allowed designers to light scenes in real time with confidence that the high-performance light maps would match their intent. Most lights in Half-Life Alyx are baked into a single term that describes distance falloff and shadowing, allowing us to change the brightness and color of lights in real time at no cost. This encoding also allows us to apply shadows from dynamic props and characters without having to render any static geometry into shadow maps. Our light maps store directional information using the popular ambient highlight direction encoding, an improvement over Valve's own radiosity normal mapping technique pioneered in Half-Life 2. This new light map encoding ensures that the bumpy surfaces can appear bumpy even when not under direct light. This blinking light source provides a good illustration of this technique, as you can perceive the surface detail even during times the light source is off.
I'm not even going to pretend I understood all of that. All I got from that is lighting is extremely complex. Barnacles! How we doing, chat? How's things? Hey, me Machine Dean. Welcome to the chat. How's things? ANCAP, you just spun all 3 until it opened. I know, I kind of did that as well, but I kind of twigged that it was about timing on all 3 channels on those doors. Limitless. Yeah, I had that problem with the door on the outline level as well. Yeah, it was tough, man. It was really tough. Right, barnacles. These are one of my favourite kind of creatures in Half-Life Alyx. Let's have a listen to see what the devs have got to say about this ugly, crazy creature.
barnacles, while an iconic Half-Life creature,
No,
presented some interesting VR-specific challenges. While their tongue is intended to trap hasty or unobservant players, those caught by them often didn't realize what was happening. They would become disoriented or even motion sick as the barnacle lifted them up to be eaten. These unfortunate players almost universally died, and failed to learn what was happening even after multiple encounters. To address this issue, we created the tongue as a particle system. This allowed us to both physically simulate it as well as reliably position it for maximum visibility. If a player does get grabbed by a barnacle, the tongue always wraps right in front of their face, no matter which direction they try to look. This makes the tongue almost impossible to miss and visually guides the player's eyes up to the location of the barnacle, so they know where to shoot to free themselves. These fixation visuals that kick in as the player is being lifted not only serve to communicate the damage the player is taking, but they also help to reduce motion sickness by narrowing the player's field of view. These changes, combined with sound effects and other visuals like seeing stars and blacking out, eliminate confusion for players and enabled us to bring this classic enemy into the world of Half-Life Alyx.
Holy smokes. So it narrows a field of view as you get caught by the barnacle. I hadn't noticed that before. I also hadn't noticed resin here before. And I also hadn't noticed resin here before. So I think I'm going to be finding a lot of resin while I'm listening to developer commentary. MMD, doing the second playthrough of this actually. Nice, man. Good stuff. I think this is like... I don't know if we'll make it all the way through. I hope we do, because, you know, there's going to be a lot of really crazy information.
You guys work together at Black Mesa, right?
But this is like my 11th playthrough or something.
Tricky place to get a job at, actually. I interviewed at Black Mesa. They said try again in a year. I don't need to tell you what happened after that. Lucky break for me, really. Honestly, it's a miracle you and your dad got out of there.
Didn't know that he dropped resin either. What's this one? Pistol reloading. Does something if I put it on my head. Here we go.
We got a lot of positive feedback from our initial experiments requiring players to perform a series of physical actions to reload the pistol. Specifically, ejecting the clip, retrieving a new clip from their backpack, inserting the clip into the gun, and chambering around. Players enjoyed learning and improving at this skill. We experimented with using a single button for both ejecting a clip and chambering around, but we found that assigning these operations to two different buttons was more interesting, even though it was more mentally taxing. In fact, it was more interesting precisely because it was more mentally taxing, as players would frequently mix up the buttons under pressure. In the early stages of the game, players would be fumbling for clips, ejecting the clips when they meant to be chambering around, and generally making a mess. To those of us observing the playtest, this looked like things had gone horribly wrong, but players themselves consistently cited this as a high point of their playthroughs. Because of the physical nature of the reload, and the skill required, players blamed themselves and not the game for the mistakes made as they were learning the reloading sequence. In this area, we provide a number of static targets in the form of barnacles for players to shoot at their own pace, increasing the likelihood that they have at least a few reloads under their belt before moving on.
Clever! So shooting these barnacles was all about training the player on the reload mechanics. Thank you very much, dude. There's always a cheeky little resin in that tube as well. One down here. Oh! Take that off. That's a pistol reloading headset.
Oh, do you need a minute? Because, I mean, I could pause the feed.
Just looking, Russ.
Just looking, Russell. Really interested to hear about this. The huge door leading into the quarantine zone. Bet there's some interesting facts about that. In fact, let's kind of like speedrun it a little bit. And get to another node where we can hear about the commentary. Cheeky little resin that's hidden there. Come here, you. Oh. Thank you. Sorry, dude. Apologies. No. Oh. In we go. I guess the developer narrative node is outside. There must be one here. Yeah, there is. Okay, we'll have a listen to that in a sec. Don't think there's anything much around here, is there? Whoa! Hacking.
In prior Half-Life games, while playing as Gordon, the player saw Alyx use her multi-tool to hack into Combine security systems in order to unlock doors or perform other acts of sabotage. This presented an opportunity for us to represent Alyx's hacking skills through VR-centric minigames. All of our hacking minigame designs were built to leverage the independently tracked head and hands common to today's VR systems. We wanted to encourage players to use both hands simultaneously and move their head to create parallax to understand the spatial relationships within the puzzles. This locker hacking puzzle is based upon one of our earliest prototypes, in which the player was tasked with using a tool in one hand to paint a path on a sphere held by the other hand. There was just something fun and unique about using all of the natural degrees of freedom of both hands to solve a puzzle in VR. In its simplest form, this puzzle solution is straightforward, but the difficulty gradually increases throughout the course of the game by introducing static or moving obstacles of various shapes and sizes on the sphere.
Well, actually, the word quarantine comes from the Italian 40 giorni, which means 40 days, the period that all ships were required to be isolated before crew could go ashore during the Black Death.
All right. Cool.
Come here, you. There we are. I mean, who designs this stuff? Seriously.
I'm gonna head in. How far is Fairview Junction?
Absolutely amazing.
You'll go through
Right
the
then.
subway tunnels on your way to the train yard.
They certainly did put a lot of thought into the game. They really did.
I don't think so.
Hey Sam, how you doing, dude?
Still got time.
That's great.
Welcome back to the
All bad
stream.
news, because they've already killed him. And you don't need to move a corpse. You just bury it. Or burn it.
Right then, through the wall that is the quarantine zone.
Russell, are you seeing this?
Whoa.
All right. Here we go.
Take that ammo. And on to the next section. Yeah, I think they did a little more than just put some thought into it. Like, it's groundbreaking in so many different ways. And it just sounds like they play tested the hell out of it for years to make sure that the final experience was like AAA. Okay, so we got a developer node here, so let's have a little listen. So it's probably going to talk about the health injectors. So these
Hey,
things.
Russell, I just found a loose syringe of God knows what. Is this medicine?
Does it have a skull and crossbones on it?
I don't see one.
Probably medicine then.
Right then, let's have a little listen about the health injectors.
In our early prototypes, players could heal themselves by grabbing a Half-Life 2 health pack and pressing down on a controller button, which obviously wasn't a very interesting VR interaction. During the development of Half-Life Alyx, the Counter-Strike team added health injectors into CSGO as part of the new Danger Zone game mode they were developing.
Counter-Strike.
When we saw this, we felt that an injector would work well as an intuitive healing item in VR as well. Players would press a button to arm the injector as a way of indicating their intent to use it. This prevented unintentional use of the injector and gave us an opportunity to showcase how physical the interaction was going to be via haptics, animation, and sound. Some testers even initially responded with dread over the fact they were going to have to use a needle on themselves and looked away when performing the injection action.
No way!
We also had to create approximations of the player's arms and body, as playtesters all had their own preferences for where they wanted to apply the injection. We even added the ability to inject into the head, since so many players tried to do it just to see if it would work.
People were injecting themselves in the head. So they added that ability. I haven't tried that. My favourite spot for the health injectors is the hand. Yes.
Do you hear that?
What is that? Oh boy.
Yeah, that's the way we gotta go.
No shortcut?
Yeah, that is the shortcut.
Alright, so more pistol training.
We had to ensure that players would become proficient at reloading their pistol during the early levels of the game, or later encounters in the game would be overly difficult. The prior map contained only static targets in the form of barnacles. Players could engage the barnacles at their own pace, but there were enough of them that players would need to reload at least a few times. This first live zombie is locked behind the chain link fence and cannot reach the player until the player opts into the encounter by shooting the lock on the door. The placement of zombies in the upcoming section of the game is designed to require plenty of reloading, to ensure that the player builds up this skill.
Alright, so again, pistol training. Right, let's shoot that and let him through.
The barnacle's on our side. It's not though, obviously, so don't walk under them.
Oh, the animations on those things. Oh. Gross.
Oh, just so you know, the Russells have a built-in display that shows you resin, ammo, might come in handy.
Got it. Thanks.
I must admit, I am liking the new Steam VR update that gives you your desktop in VR, so you don't have to use Overdrop anymore. And the performance of this thing is so much better than Overdrop. Overdrop came with such a performance overhead, it was crazy. Right, we've got some more resin here. So again, this is all about training the player to use the pistol and the reload mechanic, and that's why the barnacles all exist. Crouching.
Virtual reality provides the opportunity to add physicality to gameplay, but this needs to be balanced against player fatigue and accessibility. For example, we experimented with a low ceiling in this area, requiring players to crouch the whole time that they made their way across the tops of these train cars. Playtesters did not enjoy having to crouch for so long, so we raised the ceiling.
Yeah, crouching in VR is a thing. I've just noticed there's baby barnacles here as well, which I've never seen before. Like these two barnacle up. Boom. Whoa.
Oh boy.
Yeah, be careful.
Breakable glass.
breakable glass panels in Half-Life Alyx are yet one more system designed to convince players
Yeah,
that
breakable
they are
glass
present
is
in a
amazing.
living, breathing world.
Look at that.
Panels detect the position of an incoming impact and procedurally generate new, smaller glass panels in a radial pattern around the impact position. These new panels can then break into smaller panels themselves, and so on. We found that players would often break glass panels accidentally, then spend time testing just how interactive they really were by trying to break them more, eventually realizing that yes, the glass really did shatter at the appropriate location. At one point, we experimented with building special puzzles out of breakable glass, but in the end we found the glass to be more appropriate as a passive interactive element in the world, one that reacts in a satisfying way to a variety of impacts, from zombie melee attacks to incoming gunfire or any other physical interaction in the game.
That's crazy. They put so much effort into making sure that the glass was breaking realistically. So if I tap it, that was actually quite a big shatter. And if I use a whole gun, about the same, but it feels realistic. Like they just achieved the realism with it. Wonder how many days they spent on that. Okay, we've got the first fabricator here. Let's get rid of this dude. Actually, we can shoot his arm, can't we? Where is it? Oh, missed. Aim's off today. Can't seem to hit his arm. There we are. That took a really long time to kill him. Okay, so we've got one node here that is player comfort and pacing. And then looks like we've got one about the fabricator.
Alex, I think that's a combine fabricator. Put something in it. I want to see how this thing works.
Got it. Will it work on the Russells?
No, but it should fix up that pistol nicely. Good thing, too. I gave you one of my lesser guns.
Thanks, Russell.
Well, you know, in case it doesn't make it back.
Tell you what, Russell. If I die, I owe you a gun.
You owe me a gun anyway. That wasn't a gift. That's my gun.
Okay, weapon upgrades.
Weapon upgrades are a new feature for the Half-Life franchise, and fictionally this mechanic paired well with Alyx's tinkering nature. We approached this design challenge first by thinking about what sort of upgrades could be meaningful and also provide additional value to players without removing established interactions. With limited resin to spend, the upgrade system also provided an avenue for players to personalize and invest in their favorite weapon, or streamline an interaction on another weapon, increasing its value to them. For example, the reflex sight still requires players to physically aim, but it improves the feedback on exactly where their shot will hit, and exposes previously hidden enemy weak points. While some players enjoyed this feedback and new targeting opportunities, others didn't and would instead focus on upgrades that suited their style of play. This allowed players to spend their limited resin on upgrades they cared about the most. Another aspect of weapon upgrades that we focused on was not necessarily obvious when we first started to design and test combat in VR. Due to the more physical nature of combat in VR, it can really push on the mental and physical capacity of certain players, as they're required to utilize both their hands and move their head to take in the environment dealing with enemies. While this is a very natural experience, there's also a lot going on at any given point with reloading and combat. As we observed players in some of these more intense combat situations, we started finding opportunities to allow some upgrades to reduce the number of times a physical interaction was required, or reduce the complexity of a particular interaction. The autoloader on the shotgun is a good example. When added to the shotgun, the normally slow, methodical action of feeding shells into the gun is replaced with a far simpler, faster interaction of slapping the shells into the autoloader before they get automatically fed into the gun. This allows players to look around, focus less on the gun while reloading, and take in more of what's going on around them.
Interesting that a lot of people didn't find that they liked the reflex sight. I mean, if I didn't know about the value of the reflex sight after a couple of playthroughs, and I had enough resin to buy all of these upgrades, I would probably go laser sight first. But because you're limited with the amount of resin you have at the beginning of the game, like pretty much your only choice is going to be reflex sight anyway. The only other one you could get potentially is burst fire. Okay.
Oh, that really worked, didn't it?
That did work.
Huh.
Right, bear me a second. That's better. Right. So we've got 8 resin left. And we've upgraded with reflex sight. Oh, there's a resin there. Right, let's go and shoot some zombies, shall we? Player comfort and pacing.
At the beginning of the Half-Life Alyx project, we had the expectation that players would want to take a break after 30 to 45 minutes, since that's what we were seeing with the lab and other small-scale VR experiences available at the time. Because of this, we designed the pacing of the game's levels around play sessions of that duration. Over the course of development, however, the game itself included more downtime between intense combat encounters, and the comfort of the new crop of HMDs improved significantly. In fact, as the game progressed, we found that players were happy to play for hours on end. At the end of a playtest, players would often remark that this was the longest they had ever played VR in a single session.
I bet it was. Right, I think this guy's got a weakness, hasn't he? Oh, maybe not. He has on the leg. Nice flip there, dude. I mean, the creepiness of the atmosphere of this is incredible. Such a cool mechanic that you can just make them explode from one shot of your pistol. How did you not die from that? I'm surprised they haven't talked about the atmosphere that they wanted to create in this section of the game, because it's pretty amazing. Let's go.
Nice shooting, Alex.
Thanks.
Thanks, Russell.
You know, for all your talk about what a lesser gun this thing isn't half bad.
Right, we got some goodies over this side. Some resin, and there's some ammo behind here as well. Let's get rid of these barnacles. Can't remember if they drop anything yet. Like, there is quite a trade-off with shooting the barnacles, because you obviously waste a lot of ammunition shooting at them, and you don't always get that ammunition back. So it's always a risk. go talk about head crabs. Head crab.
Head crab!
I see it.
Head crab foreshadowing. Alright.
Until this point in the game, players have only seen head crabs attached to the heads of zombies. This led playtesters familiar with head crabs from prior games to anticipate encountering them on their own. We decided to play up this anticipation by foreshadowing the first head crab encounter with a head crab that drops out of a vent before disappearing, as well as head crab sounds in the environment, including a threatening head crab sound coming from the partially boarded up doorway ahead.
What, this one? No. Oh, he said ahead, didn't he? This way. Oh yeah, I can hear it, yeah.
Yep, there it is. Found it. Probably only one of those. Okay, two of them.
How we doing, folks? How's chat? Hope you're enjoying a bit of Half-Life Alyx and some commentary from the Valve developers with some interesting insights. I'm going to turn on the aircon. It's getting hot in here again. Oh. Is that on? Are you on? It's on! Hey! Okay, on to the next level. So we've only had, what? In that one, about 5 developer commentary nodes, I think. Which is good, because I think if they had any more than that, you just wouldn't ever complete the playthrough with commentary on.
Heard anything about Dad, Russell?
No. Radio silence since he got on the train.
Damn it.
Well, the good news is he's probably fine.
How do you know that?
Because they're taking him to Nova Prospect to torture him. That's the torture place. So they're hardly going to torture him before they get there. So he's fine. Logically speaking.
Logically speaking. Now what's here? We got some stuff in the room, haven't we?
Few mags left.
That there is a floppy disk. We used to store information on them, with magnets, if you can believe it.
Huh.
Specifically, 2 micrometers magnetic iron oxide, 3 micrometers barium ferrite, 1.2...
Russell? How do you know all this?
I'm reading it here on my computer. I downloaded the internet before the war.
You downloaded the entire internet?
Most of it.
Nice.
Yeah, it is.
Russell downloaded the internet. That reminds me of the IT Crowd. Did anyone ever see that episode of the IT Crowd with the internet? And they pretend the internet's in a box. And they give it to their boss that hasn't got a clue about IT. And she honestly believes the internet is in this little box that they gave her. It's quite funny.
Russell, are you seeing this?
Possibly. Are you seeing floating garbage?
It looks like it's just cardboard.
Right. Well, seems harmless.
Yeah. Weird, though.
Surprised there's no commentary on this bit, actually.
What is that?
I think there's a headset this way. Yeah. This should be interesting. So we've got 2. We've got one about musical motifs and one about Half-Life mural. Let's listen to the Half-Life mural one.
There are 2 layers to the markings on the walls in this area.
All good,
square
mate.
and dot
Enjoying the
patterns
stream.
that are the
It's
functional
interesting to
elements of
hear
the
what the devs have to
puzzle,
say.
And
It
a
is.
mural representing the Vortigaunt's interpretation of the events of the Half-Life saga. For the first few years of development, this area only contained the dot patterns supporting the perspective puzzle. But as we fleshed out the rest of the level, we found that playtesters responded especially positively to the Vortigaunt's wall markings leading up to the hideout. It was at this point that we realized that this area could serve as a canvas for our Vortigaunt's artistic magnum opus. To do this, we organized the dot patterns into a sort of swirling star field behind the Vortigaunt's art. The imagery itself, which was inspired by petroglyphs and other traditional rock art, portrays many significant events from the Combine invasion, painted hurriedly by the injured Vortigaunt, almost as if he was trying to capture what fleeting memories he still had of the vortessence from which he had been severed. The fact that Vortigaunts have a complicated relationship with time gave us a lot of leeway in terms of drawing this as a strict, linear timeline. For example, you may notice that the Vortigaunt uses contemporary Combine troops as shorthand for Combine invasions from the past, or that the timeline is just generally hazy. A little from the past, little from the present, and a little looking forward to the future events of Half-Life 2.
Now this guy, he's like one of the big bosses in Half-Life 1. One with the two heads. And then I guess this is when Gordon Freeman destroys the Citadel. So the events that's after this game. Musical motifs.
There are many musical themes and motifs used throughout the game to represent unspoken aspects of the story and lore. For example, the Vortigaunts play an integral role in the subplot of the game, and we chose to use music to subconsciously communicate the repeating nature of their role both in the timeline of Half-Life Alyx and in the larger timeline of the Half-Life saga. Within the music in this scene, you'll hear variations of themes used throughout the timeline of the game, from the very first sounds of the game up to the finale in the vault. Variations of these motifs represent the imprisoned chanting of the Vortigaunts.
Oh yeah. That's really subtle.
The extraction of their energy to confine the G-Man. As well as historically familiar sounds representing the vortessence itself.
Alex, you alright? What's wrong?
I'm fine, Russell. What's up?
I'm losing your
Yeah, I
signal.
mean, graphically the game is impressive, but you can tell from what he's saying there that they spent an equal amount of time on the audio side. Even down to the background sounds relating to the Vortigons. It's pretty amazing.
This is weird.
Alex reactions.
During our earliest attempts to raid Alyx, our instinct was to have her react to absolutely everything. But what we learned from playtesting was that Alyx reacting too much could actually be off-putting. Say a player's in a really tense, zombie-filled level, and they're having a great time, but suddenly Alyx is in their head, sounding angry, or frightened, or anxious. These Alyx reactions were creating a disconnect between how the player was feeling and how the character they were role-playing as was feeling. So we took a lot of those out. The Alyx reactions we left in tended to be the ones that were practically universal. Alyx's reaction here to the surreal entrance to the Vort hideout is a good example, where it was just so different from everything the player had seen up until then and kind of takes you by surprise. We watched so many playtests where the player would see it and say, "Whoa, that's weird." So we had Alyx say the same thing a second later, almost like an echo.
And that happens throughout the game. I remember saying one thing and Alex repeated it as well. And that's why you really connect with the character, because she thinks the same as you. And they obviously got that from playtesting, which is what he said. Interesting.
Oh.
The Alyx fans. You received my messages.
I did?
Come. Enter.
Okay. Thanks.
You are.
So, what's a Vortigaunt doing here?
Cooking.
Right, but I mean, in general.
I have a brain injury.
Oh, I'm sorry to...
My brain is injured.
That's terrible, and I hope... Look, I'm actually pretty busy looking for my father. Eli Vance.
Vance. Yes.
The Combine have him, and I really do need to get moving.
The Combine. Yes. Do not go yet. I must show you something.
Look,
the animation blows me away.
I can't stick around.
It is important.
I know, I'm sure it is.
The Alyx Vance must go this way, anyway.
And his hand does exactly the same movements as his other hands. The one in his chest. Like another way of emphasizing what he's talking about. Okay, hideout interactivity.
For as long as we've been making choreographed scenes like this one, we found that there are two types of players. Those who become engrossed with the characters, and those who tinker with everything around them, paying little attention to the scene's action. To make these environments entertaining for the tinkerers, we usually add objects for them to find and play with. Since this scene is split into two rooms, we were able to add a large number of interactions to this first room for players to discover after the Vortigaunt has moved to the second room. Some interactive objects are pure physically driven toys, like the dangling headcrab corpses and the hanging pans. Others are animations triggered by the player's actions, like the way the caged headcrabs react to the player approaching or shooting them. One type of object on the table is a squeezable headcrab heart, which is a remnant from an older version of this scene where the player would revive a wounded Vortigaunt by squeezing nectar from these hearts. While that scene didn't work out, we found the experience too compelling and, well, too gross to completely cut from the game.
I would have loved to have played like an uncut version of this game and see all those early scenes that they actually cut out in the end.
In here.
Hideout scene.
The fundamental challenge of any choreographed dramatic scene like this one is making sure that we entertain the player without undermining the delivery of critical gameplay information. In this case, the player needed to leave this scene with the knowledge that the Vortigaunts have been imprisoned and that the player should seek the Northern Star. This particular scene went through many different variations during development, from a cooking scene with an extremely traumatized Vortigaunt to this humorous version. We even experimented with an interaction where the player was required to squeeze the nectar of several headcrab hearts into the Vortigaunt's mouth to revive him. While this was a memorable and novel VR interaction that ensured the player was engaged with the scene, the interactivity on the player's part often resulted in playtesters remembering the actions they took, but not the critical gameplay information. Eventually, we ended up with this more humorous scene, which struck an effective balance between entertainment and goal delivery. Importantly, we also distributed the scene across two separate rooms, breaking the information delivery into two steps. The first room where the player meets and learns about the state of the Vortigaunt, and the second room where the player is given their new goal. Separating these physically into rooms seemed to help players more reliably retain the critical information delivered in the second room. While this scene did undergo a lot of changes, one story beat remained virtually unchanged from the very first roughed-in version. The moment the Vortigaunt tosses a headcrab carcass down to the player and yells, "Sustenance!" Right from the start, this moment always got a great reaction from playtesters and remained all the way to the final product.
That sustenance moment is brilliant. Okay, yeah, really interesting insight there. So what they were saying is VR players get distracted really, really easily. So you kind of have to hand feed them the information to do with the storyline. So they had to adjust this scene a number of times to do that. Okay. Sustenance.
I will help the Alyx lands. Look to the northern star.
Why?
For guidance.
Okay, thanks. Are you done helping?
I am not. Here. Sustenance.
I'll eat it later. Thanks for the help.
You will be welcome.
You will be welcome. Which just further shows that the Vortigon's sense of time is all over the place. You will be welcome. Not you are welcome. And on to the next chapter. Cool. Well, I must admit, I'm enjoying it. As I say, it is a very, very chilled playthrough of this game. All I'm doing is going through, listening to the developer commentary. I will, of course, be playing the core mechanics of the game because you can't progress unless you do that. But it's just really interesting just to see Valve's perspective on how they delivered what is considered to be the best VR game to date. You know, I especially love hearing about how they develop characters as well, because there's so many memorable types in this game. Like, Russell
Alyx,
is just an incredible character.
The signal's back. Can you hear me? Are you okay?
Russell, I'm good. How's Dad?
They've got him on the train. He's on the move. You've got to find Fairview Junction before they get there.
I'm working on it.
Alright, a few things to pick up here. So we got the mask. Put on some ammo. Now, was there any resin in this one? I don't know why. Part of me is thinking there was resin. But I don't think there is. Oh, this would be good.
So anything happened when you cut out?
You're not gonna believe this, but I ran into a Vortigon.
Vortigon? What was he doing down there?
Hiding. I think he escaped from the Combine.
What did he say?
You ever meet a Vortigon? He said crazy words.
You is ugly. Right. Armored head crabs. 1.
We spend time on every game design element thinking about how the player is expected to learn of its existence and understand its details. Some design elements are so important that the game experience will break if the player doesn't understand them, while others may just be fun diversions or rewards for exploring the game's systems. Any required element will require work on our part to teach the player. In Half-Life, we try to teach elements in ways that feel as natural as possible, entwined within the core flow of the game so that you don't feel like the game just stopped to teach you something. We don't always succeed, but the attempts usually lead us somewhere interesting. In this case, we need to teach the players about the armored headcrab. The key elements that we want them to understand are that the headcrab is invulnerable on the top, but has a weak spot on its belly. We would also like the player to learn that the headcrab exposes its weak spot right before it jumps, but this isn't required. The player can fall back to shooting the weak spot as the headcrab scrambles around after a leap.
And possibly one of the funnest enemies to destroy in the game. But they are a pain at the same time because you have to be very accurate. See if I can get this one. Okay, Armored Head Crabs 2.
Teaching design elements of enemies is always tricky. Players have shown us for years that it's really hard to learn something new while under attack. We've also seen that invulnerability, in particular, is a difficult enemy feature to teach. If players are blasting away at an enemy, They are often not paying close attention to the impact feedback. If the enemy is vulnerable in some areas and not others, players may kill the enemy with a spray of gunfire, not realizing that some of their shots did nothing, while others hit critical weak spots. So when we approached the armored headcrab training, we knew we'd need to do significant work. The first step was to avoid placing the player under duress by containing the enemies inside this wire fence. Next,
So
we
clever.
placed headcrabs at eye level facing the player, exposing their bright, pulsing weak spot. If the player shoots one immediately, they are rewarded with a unique death effect where the headcrab explodes into chunks. This effect is designed to show the player that they did something special to kill this headcrab, as opposed to how they've been killing headcrabs up until now. There are a couple of other pieces in the setup here that are important. A second headcrab is placed right behind the lock the player must shoot to enter the cage, encouraging the player to notice the weak spot and try shooting it. 2 more headcrabs are loose in the cage, scripted to repeatedly attack invisible points on the wire fence. This ensures they are constantly demonstrating the way they expose their weak points before they leap, and this allows players to practice hitting the weak spot from behind the safety of the fence.
So I didn't think about parts of this game as you're being trained. Like, a lot of the beginning of the game is to do with being trained on the pistol. This is being trained about the armoured headcrabs and how to kill them.
With any section of natural entwined training, we've observed that there's rarely any one thing that succeeds in teaching all players, nor do 100% of players leave with the perfect understanding we'd like. If player understanding is absolutely critical, we have to build a more bulletproof gate that ensures the player demonstrates understanding before moving onwards. In fact, we do just that when the player acquires the shotgun in the next area. In the case of the armoured headcrab, however, playtesting showed that we could afford to let a few players through with less than perfect understanding. This section gave them enough of a chance to experiment that they got a sense of what was going on, and further encounters with armoured headcrabs solidified it. There was still a lot of iteration on the visual design of the headcrab to further drive home its armour and weak point, and we also added a custom response to shotgun fire. In that case, the armoured headcrab flips over and wriggles for a second, exposing its weak point. This was added to reduce the resource loss we saw happening in players who were still struggling to understand the armoured headcrab mechanics after they acquired the shotgun.
How do you struggle to understand that mechanic?
Oh, that zombie has a shotgun.
Shotgun Gate 1.
One challenge we always face when giving a new weapon or tool to the player is ensuring that they collect it before moving on. In these cases, we try to establish some kind of gate that the player can only get past using the new item. This can be especially tricky in cases where we are giving the player a new tool that doesn't fundamentally change their capabilities.
It is very interesting to hear
as in
thoughts,
the case
definitely.
of the shotgun, where almost everything that can be done with the shotgun can also be done with the pistol. In contrast, the pistol gate, where the player had to acquire the pistol before being able to shoot the lock off of the fence back at Russell's lab, was simple to design and execute. For this shotgun gate, we not only needed to ensure that the player collected the shotgun, but also that they learned how to load it before proceeding. We playtested a number of approaches to teaching the reload mechanics during combat, and repeatedly found that it didn't work. When faced with learning a new, complex task under duress, players would retreat back to using their pistol, which was a known quantity to them.
Yeah, I get that. I get that completely. Shotgun Gate 2.
Once the player has collected the shotgun, they are only halfway through the shotgun gate. Next, they need to learn how to reload it. To drive home the necessity for the player to learn how to use this new weapon, we added an incoming threat, using a variety of audio and visual effects to sell it. While our goal is to make the player feel like they have a limited amount of time, the time pressure is entirely fake, and everything proceeds based on the player's progress in loading the shotgun for the first time. Once the shotgun has been loaded, a short timer starts, after which zombies burst through the walls. If the player happens to look at the walls before that timer is up, we abort the timer and introduce the zombies. The combination of a timer and a look trigger is a common trick used in places where we'd like the player to see a neat visual moment, but we can't wait forever or the game simply won't progress. The breaking of the walls by the zombies is the final step in opening the shotgun gate.
Having new enemies open the way forward when they enter the player's space is a fairly tried and true method, but it's never one we're particularly happy with. It's always a bit too convenient and lacks agency on the player's part. But in a setup like this, which contains a novel puzzle, a new weapon, and its associated mechanics, plus an ambush, we're already dealing with a lot of design complexity packed into a small space, and further additions would complicate the scenario even further.
One of my favourite weapons.
Got it. Hurry up and load that thing. It's getting louder.
So the pressure here is an illusion. So the moment you cock the gun, then they start coming through, and that's a trigger.
We did it.
Very satisfying. There's one resin up here. I think there's one over the other side as well. There she is. Shotgun design 1. Did I just miss my head? How did I miss my head?
The visual design of the shotgun included a number of challenges. Shotguns in games are generally powerful, and we communicate that power with bulk. As a
Oh, didn't mean to take the headset off there. Hang on.
result, they're big and held in two hands. But our experiments with two-handed VR weaponry didn't reach a level we were satisfied with. When holding a two-handed object in real life, the object itself provides a physical connection between the two hands, and that constraint allows players to stop thinking about it consciously, in addition to providing physical feedback. In VR, without that connection or feedback, we found that players had to keep maintaining their own internal sense of how they were holding their two-handed weapon, or they dripped their hands into positions that were hard for us to reconcile. As a result, our two-handed weapons required players to play along more than we liked. Since one of our core goals with Life Alyx was to allow players to fully immerse themselves by ceasing to think about what they were doing in real life, we decided to focus on single-handed weapons, including the shotgun.
I quite like the single-handed weapons, but I totally get why they dropped that. It's all about simplicity, really. Everyone's got a different skill set with games. Oh my god, there's more.
Three shells left.
Cool! It's very interesting to hear the insights of the devs as you're playing through the game. I mean, it does slow down the pace of the game, but at the same time, yeah, it is. Agreed. Oof. Any more resin? Lovely. And what we got up here? Ammo. And a bug container as well. See if I can get the shot from over here. Oh, that was so close. That was so close. Gonna try this again. Okay, Bug. You are going home. Ah! This time, okay? This time. So close. So close. Right. Here you go. No! Alright. I give up. That'll do. And I did catapult a resin over this side somewhere. Where's he gone? He's gone now. There? Let's see whether or not we can upgrade the pistol now. $21. Let's get burst fire. Oh. One resin left after this.
Wow.
Nice.
My gun's looking pretty good.
Russ, come on. At this point, it's kind of our gun.
Keep it on burst fire for now. There's a shotgun shell. And another resin. And a magazine. Cool. Nice! Onwards and upwards, folks. Unlucky dude, yeah. I know. Terrible shots. Okay, down we go. We are going this way. Okay, we got a little headset over there we can listen to. Let's see what this has to say. Darkness gate.
As with the shotgun and the pistol, we needed a gate for the flashlight to ensure the player couldn't proceed without it. We tried a number of designs around the moment where the player collected the flashlight, but they all ended up being about the player picking up an object, and not specific to that object being a flashlight. Given that the flashlight's primary function is to provide light, we felt the gate needed to be an area of darkness. We also really wanted the player to be excited to get the flashlight, and that meant they had to experience darkness before collecting the flashlight. This turned out to be an interesting challenge, because we already had many poorly lit areas prior to this. And now we needed an area that was so dark that players would correctly interpret it as a gate. Our initial implementation was simply to ensure there were no lights within the hallway. Unfortunately, playtesting immediately showed that wasn't enough. Some VR headsets have extremely low black levels, and on those headsets, enough light bounced in from this lit area to enable players to move forward. In addition, our low ground fog provided just enough contrast in the dark hallway for players to make out the scene and stumble through it. Even once we removed fog and bounce light in this area, we saw yet other ways that players tried to move forward. Some players would fire their pistol repeatedly, using the muzzle flash as a strobing light source. Others would use the teleport targeting UI to probe the room, because at that point in the project, it had a small light source attached to it. In the end, we disabled muzzle flashes inside the hallway, and the teleport UI lost its light. The final step was the addition of some dialogue from Alyx, commenting on the darkness and her need for a light source. This was aimed at solving a perceptual problem. Up until now, our game has taught players that their goal is to continue moving forward.
Okay, yeah, we got that one.
Anytime that forward progress is blocked, it's because there's something in the local area that needs solving. Given that structure, it's entirely rational for players to do everything they can to find some way to see in the darkness ahead. Alex?
Okie doke. So basically, that room back there is just about you grabbing the torch, and it won't let you go further until you got it. Airlock.
Like hacking and environmental puzzles, toner puzzles like this one are often used to relieve tension from combat and engage the player's mind in a refreshing way. This puzzle introduces a new junction type, which has 2 inputs and 2 outputs, as well as branching circuits. Functionally, it's just a simple airlock. Only one of the main combine gates can be powered on at a time, with an additional wrinkle that the smaller side gate on the return path must be powered down separately. In addition to providing a break between hectic combat encounters, this puzzle is a gameplay mechanic refresher since it's been some time since the player has seen a toner puzzle, and the next ones start to ramp up in complexity.
Hello, dude. Yo. This was so creepy the first time I played this bit.
Ooh. It is.
Oh!
Everything all right?
Nope, I'm good. I'm good.
I don't remember a head crab being here. Well, I do, but not these ones. Did he come? Oh, he must have come off the zombie. He came off the zombie, didn't he? Yeah. Okay, so this is where we grab the torch. Look at this guy's face. I think that's a barnacle that's meant to have got him, and then something's happened to the barnacle. It's pretty gross, anyway you look at it. So let's grab the torch.
Oh, thank God.
Oh, we got a little headset here. Flashlight.
Last 4. Out of shells.
Where are they? There you are. That's 2 down. Any more of the big black head crabs?
This is
3. Any more? We're all good. Lucky, really, because I was just running out of shotgun shells. Alrighty then. We have the flashlight. Let's continue on.
It's really dark. Russ?
Yeah?
Can you just talk?
About what?
About anything. Literally anything.
Well, I think that given our situation, your irrational fear of the dark is actually quite appropriate. You know, I can give you easily 100 reasons to be terrified.
Okay, that was my fault. I'll be more specific next time.
Flashlight articulation. We'll have a little listen to this one.
Shortly after adding the flashlight to the game, we discovered the playtesters would frequently brace their gun hand with their flashlight hand. This meant that the players had to orient their flashlight hand awkwardly to align the light with their aim. We decided to make this an automatic behavior of the offhand whenever it was brought close to the grip of the gun. If you do this, you'll see that the offhand grips the gun in a natural pose, and the flashlight aligns with the aim. In fact, if you look closely at the end of the flashlight, you'll notice that it has a ball joint. This allows the flashlight to articulate based on whether the offhand is gripping the gun or not. The ball joint has 4 different orientations, one for each gun, and a neutral orientation for when the player is not supporting the gun to aim. These 4 orientations ensure that the flashlight is always pointed in an ideal direction for the player. In one-handed mode, the flashlight attaches to the gun hand at an orientation that is ideal for all scenarios.
Ah, I see. So when you attach your hand to the bottom of the gun, the flashlight kind of twists around so it's facing forward so you can see where you're aiming. Subtle. Like it. Okay, we circled back round here, haven't we? I swear he took about 5 hits. Burst fire for the win. Apart from when you run out. Damn.
Last 3.
Oh, that's not going to help. I think that's all of them. Maybe. Done. Okay, we've heard enough about the kind of darkness side, I think.
All right,
I think we
Russ.
understand that.
Really need you to talk again.
Absolutely. Be specific.
Before. What was life like before the Combine?
Ah, excellent. Alex, have you ever heard of a club sandwich?
Nope. Not once.
Right. To make a club sandwich, you need to start with bread. Not from a bread line, from a bakery across the street. Baked that day, okay? You add tomatoes, lettuce, not vegetable paste, fresh. Then you add bacon. That's from an animal we used to call the pig. You toast the bread, and you put all that inside it.
You guys had all that? That's insane.
It is, and I'm not done. Then you add a second sandwich on top of the first one. You put ham in it, also context, and turkey from an animal we used to call the
turkey.
And more tomato, more lettuce, and a bunch of other things I'm forgetting. It was 6 inches tall and weighed a pound, and had a dozen ingredients from 5 different continents. It was the most impossible food item you could imagine in any age before ours.
Wow.
I know, right?
That is... wow. Thanks, Russ.
You're welcome, Alex.
So true when you think about a club sandwich. It is like the weirdest sandwich ever. So many things in it. What's this one? Sandwiches! Right. This will be interesting. So the story of the club sandwich that we just heard, what is the background of that?
When the writers create a new character, we try to write a variety of material from that character's perspective to help find their voice. What motivates them? What do they sound like? How do they relate to other characters? It's helpful to know the answers to questions like this early in a project, particularly when working with a team, where different people might end up writing for that character. The club sandwich story that Russell tells in this section started out as one of these writing exercises. The writing team wrote pages and pages of Russell telling Alex stories about life before the Combine, getting irritated with her, telling bad jokes, pretty much the whole emotional spectrum. As we refined Russell's character, almost all of that fell by the wayside. We needed to do that work to get to Russell, but most of it didn't sound like Russell anymore. Later in the project, we decided to make Alex scared of the dark, so we needed Russell to talk a lot in this section to keep Alex company. It didn't matter what he was saying, it just had to be this voice in the darkness that she was grabbing onto. And then we remembered, hey, didn't we write a rambling sandwich monologue a year ago? And the club sandwich speech was resurrected.
No way, that's so cool. You know, and a lot of people, when they reviewed the game as well, they mentioned the scene with the club sandwich where Russell's, you know, putting Alex's mind at rest. Because it is so well written, it really is. I think this is probably the spookiest bit in the game for me. This section here. You know, and there's a lot of debate about whether or not this game is a horror game, and it 100% is. Definitely. Ah! Especially when they do things like that. Kind of kick barrels in your face. Ah! Oh, that was close.
T-Rex left.
Oh god, there's another one. Let's go around this way. Where'd he go? There he is. Got him. Don't know whether or not that got his head crab though. Yeah, it's dead. Yeah, I'm not a fan of games where they throw you into the darkness and you end up with a flashlight. It's like recently I was playing Outlast. Oh, scary as hell. Needed that magazine. And that one. Oh god. Boom. Oh, another one. Oh, how did I miss it? Physics though, unbelievable. I think this area is now clear. Are we clear, folks? We're clear. Woo! And breathe. We have light again. And down we go. Yeah, it totally is a horror game. You weren't too keen on it either, yeah. 100%. It's just... I think the combination of... It's the head crabs in the darkness that get me. Because the head crabs are so unpredictable. So if there's no light sources around other than a torchlight, and there's a lot of noises in the environment from maybe 1 or 2 head crabs or more, it's really confusing as to where they're going to jump at you from. And that confusion instills fear in me. And I think that's why I find that particular section really quite scary. I'm trying to think, is there any other parts of the game that are scarier than that? I guess the one where you actually get the torch with the black head crabs is terrifying, really. First time you do that, it is. But again, that comes from the fact that it's really hard to tell where the head crabs are. So that is the scariest part of the game. Head crabs in the dark, not being able to find them, unable to locate them with sound and see where they're coming from. Yeah, that's the scariest part of the game for me. 100%.
Wait, is that a dead Combine soldier?
Yeah. When you guys were off stealing the reactor, I saw the Combine moving supplies in here. So, I guess they're interested in this place again.
Right, we'll keep an eye out. Something's definitely up.
Yep, very unnerving, totally. Oh no.
Alex, manhack, watch out!
See it. Last 4. Out of shells.
Definitely need some more ammo right now, so let's have a little search. Shotgun shell.
Last shell.
Bit of resin. Was it just the one-man hack?
Okay, so right now, what it's like to live on Earth on a scale of 1 to 10. I'd say we're at a 2.
Yep, could always get worse.
What would you rate it before the Combine showed up?
Ooh, that's a toughie. I don't know. Good day? I'd say 6. Yeah, strong 6.
6? That's not great.
Well, that's life, Alex. You know, it's not always great.
Well, maybe we get the Combine off Earth and we could shoot for like an 8, you know?
Ooh, an 8. Yeah, that really would be nice. Really nice.
Cool. Now, do we need to go in this room? Oh, probably my least favourite puzzles in the game. There we go. Open sesame. It's just a massive loot fest, isn't it? Which is probably a good thing. What's this? Budget. Let's have a little listen to this. What's this about?
When building a Half-Life game, we try to start playtesting as soon as we can, even when we only have 10 or 15 minutes of gameplay built. We find it extremely helpful to see how players are reacting to what we've made as soon as possible. One of the major ways playtesting impacted Half-Life Alyx was in revealing how players reacted to the density of interactive elements in the world. Before we began, we were already aware that players would likely spend more time paying attention to the details of the world around them in VR, but we were unprepared for how significant this would be. Seeing some players spend 30 minutes messing around with a single interactive object really opened our eyes. As a result of those playtesting observations, we spend much of our development time focusing on the environment around the player and the level of details and interactivity to be found there. It might seem surprising that we didn't start with the assumption that we wouldn't need to spend that amount of time on the world, but the reality of game development is that we always have a finite amount of time to build a game and we're always making trade-offs. In the ideal case, we spend our finite time on whatever contributes the most to the player's experience. So, playtesting early and thereby getting a better sense of what elements are contributing to the player experience help us understand where to spend the limited time we have. In this case, those early playtests told us to significantly increase the amount we should budget for creating the world details and interactivity.
I skipped over the barnacle sounds one just because they kind of mentioned that earlier on. What's this? Man hack sounds. Ugh. Man hacks.
No shells left.
Alright, let's go and have a little listen to that node. Is that explodable? It is. Let's throw this at some barnacles for fun. Boom. Okay. Man-hack sounds.
Early incarnations of manhacks were frustrating to fight in VR, since their audio was not providing enough information about their location. They seemed to appear from nowhere, and, even when close to the player, they lacked a dramatic presence. We tried a variety of layered sounds with varying distance fall-offs, but this often created more confusion, especially when multiple manhacks were nearby. Our ultimate solution to the problem consisted of 2 parts. The first was to make manhacks emit the following alarm-like warning sound when they first came into range or were deployed by a Combine soldier. The second part of our solution was to add more aggressive looping sounds with short fall-off distances. The short fall-off of these sound loops meant that this specific component of manhack's sound treatment would only be audible quite near the player. Thus, when players heard these sounds, they knew that manhacks had begun hunting them, and one or more was getting close enough to be of concern.
I'm getting used to dodging them now. Had enough of playing with them though. Oh my god, there's more. Done and done.
Attention, please. Access to this block is not permitted. Local security deployed and designated to prosecute.
I love these areas, kind of like abandoned industrial areas. And everyone's wearing like biohazard suits, which obviously didn't help them in any shape or form. Because there's just bodies of these people lying everywhere. And even the ambient sound effects as well, like in the background around here. Sounds like there's shooting or something going on. And it really does kind of set the scene in the world. Like, you definitely feel more immersed in it because the audio's so good. You know, and that combined with the audio from these amazing Index headphones. Right, what's this one? Zen Overgrowth.
Before Final Out was added, the cramped dark area of this level did not take players very long to traverse. But as the fidelity of the game increased, players spent more and more time getting to this point. As we've learned over the years, too much time in dark underground areas can become fatiguing to players, and this is even more significant in VR. This outdoor section provides a change of pace and a brief respite from the dark. Not only does it give players something visually different and interesting to look at, it allows them to clearly see and assess threat in open space, allowing them to get some easy kills with a little stress. It was also important to provide some variety here, as players are about to head into a dark area that requires precision shooting and flashlight usage.
Okay, only caught a little bit of that. I was too busy dealing with zombies. Whoa. I can hear a head crab. There's one over here. Oh, jumping around in the room. Where is he? Oh.
3 left.
Hey, Just Steve, how you doing? I'm Afraid of No Ghost. Love that film. It's a classic. Welcome to the stream, dude. We're just having a very chilled playthrough of Half-Life Alyx on commentary mode. So what that means is there's certain nodes on each level, and it's like a set of floating headphones. Pick it up, put it on your head, and the developer talks to you and explains things about the level design and the characters and stuff. So far, it's been quite enlightening, have to say. And it just makes you realise the amount of work that has gone into this game. It's even more than I thought. So even though I am absolutely gagging for another Half-Life game, from what I'm hearing, that won't be a thing for at least another 3 years. At least. Mind you, the only difference this time round is the Source 2 engine is up and running now. Whereas they actually designed Source 2 at around the same time as they were developing Alyx. So it took longer. So maybe things will be sped up now.
Out of shells.
Out of shells. Oh, he got me through there. Come on. Surprised there's no commentary around this area, because there's a lot of subtle, very small interactions going on here that you think they might want to talk about.
So, when we get the Combine off of Earth, what are you gonna do?
I'm going full production mode on the Russells, of course.
Oh, of course. You'll be sitting on a landmine.
Gold mine, yep. So here's the plan. Conservative estimates.
He's sitting on a landmine. Gold mine, Alex, not landmine.
Get them off the planet. So that's year one. Then another year to mass produce the Russells. Although, just quietly, we will need to rebuild society first. You know, to get some basic infrastructure, jobs, money, that sort of thing. Otherwise people won't be able to buy them, you know. So, yeah, 3-year plan. Let's slot the infrastructure thing in for year 2.
Oh, yeah, definitely. You're gonna want to put that in year 2.
Okay, then overgrowth. Let's have a little listen.
This section, with a multitude of explosive barrels embedded in Zen overgrowth, was designed to switch up player expectations and change the pacing of the level. Prior to this point in the game, explosive barrels and canisters were used as offensive weapons. In this space, they're deadly to the player. If a barrel or canister does explode, it sets off a fatal chain reaction. This change in priority forces players to aim carefully and adds intensity without combat. This has the positive side effect of training players to utilize the pistol even more effectively. While the automatic alignment of the flashlight with a braced weapon is useful in direct combat, in this section we observed players taking advantage of the decoupled weapon and flashlight, as they illuminated and targeted barnacles in the intricate Zen foliage overhead.
Yeah, I mean, it's nerve-wracking in here. You just know that one stray bullet is enough to blow up the entire room. Rooms, plural. Rooms. Like, for example, here, it's very tempting to kind of kill one of these barnacles, but they're so close to these barrels that you just know that if you don't shoot straight, you're screwed. I think this is the only one that I take a chance to shoot in this section. Okay. Now just be careful as we go through the rest of it. Alright, another set of headphones. Volumetric lighting. We heard a lot about the lighting earlier on, so I'm going to skip the lighting headphone. This is awkward, look. So you've got the lock in front of these two barrels. So you have to shoot from the side. And kind of push those out the way to get through there without dying.
So, this whole 3-year Russell plan. You think you'd have a job for me?
Job? Alex, you invented the Alyx. Of course you can have a job.
We could be partners.
Oh, well, there would be stock options. 5 to 10 year vesting period, obviously. Could be very lucrative for you, Alex, in the long term.
I don't know what any of that means. Sounds good.
Yep, sounds good. Alex?
Right, there's a dude over there. Again, extremely tempting to shoot at him, but he's standing right next to a giant barrel. So you know you're going to sign your death warrant when you take a few shots at him. And same with this one. Right, we're nearly through this section. Not far to go. Oh, resin. Don't think I've really explored this bit over here to the back before. Is that a resin there as well? Yes. And a magazine. Like, because if I show you guys, look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 barrels behind me. Okay. I swear there's more resin on this playthrough. Or maybe it's just because I'm going through it slowly, so I'm just noticing more resin. That's probably the reason. Alrighty. Let's get out of here. Put you there for now. How we doing, chat? How's things? I hope you're enjoying a bit of Half-Life Alyx. We're just going through it fairly slowly. Oh, that doesn't help. Just to listen to some of the developer commentary. Right. Out of the way, you. Out of the way. Come on. Ooh. There we go. So this headphone is just about the volumetric lighting. Might be interesting. Should we have a little listen? Let's have a little listen. And if it's too boring, I'll take the headphones off and move on to the next node. So, volumetric lighting.
We decided early on that the environments we wanted to portray in Half-Life Alyx would benefit from an investment in high-quality volumetric lighting. This component of illumination is an indispensable tool, not just for creating atmosphere, but for drawing the player's attention to critical gameplay elements. Our system works in 3 phases. In the first phase, illumination from static light sources is captured in a 3-level hierarchical volumetric clip map surrounding the player. The highest resolution level of this clip map measures...
Oh! Oops. Oh well, got no choice. We're on to the next level, and it cut off there on the headphone. But I think you got the gist. Lighting is very important in Half-Life Alyx, and they had 3 different stages of that lighting. Static lighting, light, I guess, bouncing off objects, and volumetric lighting, and that's it really. That's all I really heard. How's things, chat? Let us know if you're enjoying a little bit of the developer commentary. I'm going to try and make it through the full
Highest
game.
resolution
We'll
level in this
see.
clip map measures 1 cubic inch per voxel. The clip map is updated incrementally, less than once per frame.
Oh. Still the volumetric lighting, headphone. We'll move on to the next node. Got a headphone over here. This is about combat. Combine sighting.
These guys have automatic weapons.
They're alien commandos. Of course they have automatic weapons. We'd have them too, but combine weapons are gene-coded, so out of luck. Unless you find one that's unbonded, or you're open to some minor genetic modification.
I'm good, Russ. I'm just gonna roll with these genes that I've got.
Look at the effects on that, right? This is for developer commentary. You put this on your head, you listen to it. But look, if I throw it on the floor, they even put time into animating these. Like, that's ridiculous. What? Right then, this will be interesting. So combine sighting, this is the first time that we come across the combine themselves. So it plays an integral part of the storyline.
We always introduce new enemies at a distance, and never while the player is under duress. Here, the player is able to observe the Combine soldiers killing some wandering zombies, giving the player an idea of how powerful the soldiers are, and how they might operate in combat. We located the Combine far enough away that it was plausible that they would not notice the player, but close enough that the player could choose to engage, but remain relatively safe from return fire.
Okay, so you can, if you want to, engage the Combine right now. So I'll see if I can shoot his tank. Got it. That was fun. So they're saying that because you're up here, you're relatively safe from the Combine fire. Combat's definitely more intense when you're down there with them, though. He's kind of run out of the way now. Okay. I think there's another fabricator down here, isn't there? Yeah. Got a dead Combine here. Now, we have a total of 24 resin right now. So, enough to upgrade, I think. So, let's do that. Down we go. Oh. Now, the question is, what do we upgrade now? I guess we carry on. We haven't got enough to upgrade to the bullet reservoir on the pistol. What about laser sight on the shotgun? No, we're going to save it. We'll save the resin for the next fabricator. We'll leave that one alone. We're not going to spend it right now. First Combine.
The first encounter with a Combine soldier caused a number of issues in playtesting. The biggest one was that players were often surprised when the soldiers started shooting at them. Some players who were new to the Half-Life series had no idea who these soldiers were. But it's also been hours of game time since players saw another human, and we found that many players weren't willing to immediately start shooting. Some players also wonder why Alyx moved so quickly to killing other humans. This area was designed to demonstrate that Combine soldiers are hostile and will attack on sight, giving the player a reason to want to shoot back. It starts with the dialogue preceding the encounter, where the player overhears the Combine discussing the problem of scavengers in the quarantine zone. Then, when the player finally achieves visual contact with their first Combine soldier, they witness that soldier in the process of executing a civilian scavenger.
Okay. So they show you how nasty the Combine is. before you get into a full battle with them. Clever thinking. Are we still at full health? Really? Still at full health? What? Hey, how you doing? Welcome to stream. Is this a lecture on the game? Yeah, basically what it is it's called Developer Commentary. So Valve have a history of doing this with their games, and there's little nodes that exist on each level, and you can listen to developer commentary. So they tell you about the game, how it was created, and interesting facts about it. And I just thought I'd do a mellow playthrough and listen to it. Ow! How's he get me? Where's he gone? He's only like, I think, one hit. 2, 3, 4. He's only 4 hit. Nothing to worry about. I may have miscalculated. Right, we destroyed the combine down here earlier on. Just having a quick look for any resin. God, my index controls are so screwed. Okay. Fighting Combine.
Squad Soldier AI has been a mainstay of the Half-Life series, so we were excited to see how their design would be impacted by the move to VR. Our early playtesting against a Half-Life 2 Combine Soldier AI in VR immediately made a number of things clear. First, players did not like to be shot at, and often had a visceral, negative response. The soldiers frequently ran at players at full speed, firing all the while, and we discovered that the speed of Half-Life 2 combat was simply too overwhelming in VR. Also, players took longer to do everything in VR, especially the core action of spotting and aiming their weapon at an enemy while staying in cover. As a result, the soldiers tended to live much longer in VR than they did in Half-Life 2. It was clear from these early playtests that the most common reaction among players was to immediately seek cover from enemy fire. So we started experimenting with changes to the Soldier AI, aimed at building a combat experience around players' tendency to seek cover. Early experiments were focused on keeping Combine soldiers at a comfortable distance from the player, while keeping them moving around enough to not have combat become too static. To create lulls in firing for players to peek out from cover, we prevented soldiers from shooting while on the run in most cases. To keep players from remaining stationary, we created a concept of flushing, where squads will attempt to flush the player out of cover, and we gave each class of soldier a different method of flushing out the player. But even in these early tests, it was also clear that players weren't capable of fighting soldiers until they'd gotten skilled in a number of basic combat actions, like reloading their gun without having to focus all their attention on it. So we were careful to slowly introduce the various types of soldiers, and even individual features within the soldier classes. For example, these early fights against Combine soldiers only feature the basic grunts, and these particular grunts don't carry grenades. This means they don't actually have the capability to flush a player out of cover. We found it was important in these first fights to give players all the time they need to learn to use cover effectively, before we start introducing enemies that could try and flush them out.
Alrighty, so again, as with a lot of the levels we've seen so far, it's kind of like a training area. And this one is just purely focused around training how to fight the Combine and the use of cover. And they changed the AI completely from Half-Life 2. So it doesn't resemble anything from Half-Life 2 with the combat AI. It's completely overhauled. Hang on. Oh, yeah. This one's a pain in the butt. Right, you go over there, and then you have to go, I think, that way. In fact, no, that has to go there, which means you have to go there. So you have to go there, which means you have to go up, down. One. Oh, you have to be facing this way, maybe?
There's plenty of time
There we
to get
go.
the override back online.
Alrighty. Fairview
Right, I'll be able to
Junction.
stop the train right here.
Home of the
You sure you
epic
can do
train
that?
crash.
Absolutely. You just need to activate the terminal.
Nice.
Then you'll need to be ready for a fight. They're not going to give up your dad easily.
I'll be ready.
It's a massive combine outpost here as well. And the big chimney stack. You know what happens to that later?
Right, that's the terminal there.
I'm on it.
Do hurry, though.
Another mini game or two. There we go. Nice. How we doing, chat? How's things? Right, we're missing a battery. Yeah. Battery is through here somewhere. There she blows. Right, so we've got the laser on. Got one. Missing that one. Yeah. Got you. Really interested to hear about Fairview Junction and the design of the train. I hope they've got headphones before you pull the lever. Nice.
Okay, no worries. But the train is coming. Just get me in. It'll only take a second. You're doing great.
Yep, doing great. No worries. Worries.
Oh.
No worries.
Come on, round we go, round we go. That's it, we got it.
Okay, now just re-engage the system.
Is it supposed to come off?
It's the opposite of what it's supposed to do, Alex.
What do I do now?
Well, don't panic. We'll stop panicking if you
I'm
are.
not panicking.
Yes, but I am. We need to find another way to stop this train.
Yeah, there is. There's headphones right next to the lever. Amazing.
Well, start
This will be
looking.
cool.
We don't have much time.
Let's have a little listen.
Okay,
At
just
this
throw
point
the
of the
switch
game,
there.
we knew we needed a big set piece, a non-combat moment to reward players for fighting their way through the dark, scary tunnels. Not only
Oh, I missed it.
but the pace
I
of the
was too busy
story
listening to
leading
the
up its
headphones.
most important moment thus far: the rescue of Eli Vance.
Damn it. Okay.
Crashing the Combine prison train that was transporting Eli felt like the exact right thing to accomplish these goals, and it gave us the opportunity to create some VR spectacle. We wanted to achieve the cinematic chaos of causing a train wreck, while giving the players an active role in the event.
Alex, you still there?
Our first attempts to design the scenario.
Okay, let's just load it up again. I want to listen to that one properly and understand about the design of the train wreck. I never did the commentary mode for Half-Life 2.
There's gotta be.
Right, so first of all, let's just pull the lever this time. Get the scene done, and then we'll listen to the commentary.
Okay, just throw the switch then. 5 seconds.
Totally and utterly epic. Right, now let's listen to what they had to say about the train crash.
At this point in the game, we knew we needed a big set piece, a non-combat moment to reward players for fighting their way through the dark, scary tunnels. Not only that, but the pace of the story was leading up to its most important moment thus far, the rescue of Eli Vance. Crashing the Combine prison train that was transporting Eli felt like the exact right thing to accomplish these goals, and it gave us the opportunity to create some VR spectacle. We wanted to achieve the cinematic chaos of causing a train wreck, while giving the players an active role in the event. Our first attempts to design the scenario were a challenge. It turned out that directing the players' attention wasn't as simple as ensuring they were in the right position through gameplay. In our initial tests, players frequently failed to see some or all of the spectacular train wreck. The crash was one of the first destruction sequences we put into the game, so we had a lot to learn about player behavior in VR and how to direct the player naturally to immerse them in the chaos. On top of that, to continually hit our target frame rate, we needed to create a cascading series of events, so that only some of the destruction was happening at any given time. Sound design, level design, effects, and animation had to be carefully coordinated to lead the player's attention through each stage of the wreck. For example, at the start of the crash, we used the sounds of train cars piling up in the distance, encouraging players to look in that direction before one of the train cars lifts up and blasts through the concrete connector. At the end of the sequence, the smokestack collapse is used to direct the player's attention to their eventual path forward, and we wanted players to witness its destruction. Before bringing down the smokestack, we gave players a brief moment of rest, and, again, used sound to draw their attention to the smokestack. Initially, we used a rumbling sound preceding its collapse, but we found this to be too subtle in practice, and instead added the transient explosion sound, which drew the player's attention towards the smokestack more reliably.
Clever. Yeah, because I often wondered how they maintained the frame rate on this bit, because it looks like it should be really, really intense. And when I first played through the game, I was playing on just a standard 1080. I've got a TI now, but it was a standard 1080. And I was like, how can my card handle this train wreck? I couldn't get my head around it. And he was just saying that one destruction sequence only happens at one time, so it maintains the frame rate. So very clever. The more you know.
What the hell are those?
I don't know. But we need to find Dad.
Yeah, no, I know. I've just never seen those before.
Yep, lot of rubble.
Oh my god. Where's Dad? 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 Dad!
I'm over here, honey. I need help, hurry.
Okay. I'm gonna reach out and pull you up. It's gonna be okay. You ready?
Yeah, I'm good.
Give me your hand.
Can't reach it, Eli, sorry.
Alyx Vance, I have come to help, as I said I would.
Thank you. Thank you. Just stay there. I'm gonna figure out how to get over to you.
No! Alyx, listen!
The thing Russell and I found is some sort of super weapon.
A super weapon?
It's something big. They got it here in the QZ in some kind of vault, but they're about to move it. Where, I don't know, but it's gonna be soon.
Then we gotta steal it before they do.
Yes! And look, I managed to pocket this Combine data pocket. If I can decrypt it, we can figure out how to use their weapon against them.
So what's the plan?
You head to the vault. I'll take this thing back to Russell's and get to work.
Wait, where is the vault?
Dad, where's the vault?
Look to the northern star.
Yes. Look to the star. Got it. Dad?
It's right in the middle of the QZ, and it's big. Get above ground and see what you can find.
I will accompany the Eli Vance and ensure his safety.
Great. Thank you. Dad, I'm gonna go find this vault.
Go! Stay safe, baby. I love you.
I love you too.
I love you too.
Thank you.
I'd never noticed that. The Vortigaunt said he loves Alyx as well. Right then, Eli rescue. This would be interesting.
For the rescue of Eli, we wanted to create a tense, just out of reach moment where the player physically saves him. But for the rest of the story to work, Alyx and Eli had to take different paths at the end of the scene. We tried a few different approaches, including a version where Eli was hanging from a ledge just in front of the player, and the player could reach down to attempt to grab Eli's hand to pull him up. In practice, however, players' hands would collide with the real-world floor. Not only did this make it impossible to reach Eli, it took players out of the moment, wrecking the emotion of the scene. Since Eli and Alyx had to take different paths, we tried an approach where Alyx rescued Eli, but he was injured and couldn't proceed. Unfortunately, many players would stick around, not wanting to abandon him. Eventually, we arrived at the solution that shipped in the final product. Separating Eli from the player with the Vortigaunt's rescue made for a much more meaningful return and fulfillment of the Vortigaunt's promise to help Alyx. The datapod that Eli found was an addition that not only let us integrate Eli back into the story later, but also gave him something to do, so there was a much stronger reason why he would not accompany the player on their journey going forward.
Okay, so the players, sorry, not the players, the characters kind of split off on their own paths then. So Eli goes to decrypt the datapod, and we carry on towards the super weapon. Right, on to the next chapter. Off we go. But yes, so it's kind of like, you can frame it as a lecture, but it's not really a lecture. It's just a commentary from the developers. But welcome back to the channel, dude. How you doing? I've totally forgotten what the next level is in this. We're not at the hotel yet, are we? I don't think we're at the Northern Star just yet. Super weapon, okay.
You know?
Oh, no, we are.
Got a bit messy back there, but we did get Dad back.
Yeah.
What?
That's probably gonna draw some attention. Not probably, actually. It's definitely drawing attention. Look, they're looking for you now, okay? So just be careful. You know, if we can get this weapon, we can change things around.
Yeah. If.
Look, I know we've only been working together for a few hours now, but I want you to know I'm proud of you. Okay, you're under a lot of pressure here.
Wow. Russ.
So much pressure, in fact, that I hesitate to even bring it up. But I did notice that when you reached out for your father's hand, had he actually grabbed it, his grip would have crushed all the delicate sensors in the Russells.
Ah. Okay.
Totally understandable, and would have been worth it, by the way, in this case.
Right.
Having said that, I have a hard time imagining another situation where that would have been the case. And much like your father, the Russells are priceless. Okay, so just, moving forward.
Russ, I promise your gloves are safe with me.
Okay, so a bit of more background on the character of Russell there. So you understand that as much as he likes Alyx, He's all about the tech that he's made with the gloves. And he's protecting those as much as he's protecting Alyx. This is an interesting level, actually, when you think about it, because it's almost got like, well, you end up in like an office, don't you? Which is a bit weird, because you're actually in a train station, but there's like office complex. Is that resin there? How'd you get to that? Oh, that must be later on. That's later. Oh. Keycard. Let's put that in there. We're going to need this bug. Let's put you there for now. Getting a little bit low on the ammo situation, so I need to do some searching. No. Here we go. Right. No crowbar. That's right. So when Half-Life Alyx first came out, everyone was moaning at the fact that you didn't use a crowbar. But at the end of the day, that crowbar is associated with Gordon Freeman, not Alex Vance. So I suspect that's what this developer commentary is going to say, but let's have a listen.
Early on in the project, we spent some time experimenting with the classic Half-Life crowbar. Playtests showed us that it was an interesting tool for our player to use in puzzles and world interactions, but we weren't very happy with how our melee combat efforts turned out. We felt it was really important that the crowbar was solid to the world and enemies, and that resulted in some tricky physics challenges. Players could easily push the crowbar into an enemy in front of them, because nothing in the real world could stop it. Indeed, without that real-world physical feedback, we found playtesters exhibited a wide variety of swing behaviors. Some would waggle the controller rapidly, others would put their whole body into it. At the same time, playtest response to our pistol prototype was very positive, especially around the more complex reloading mechanics. Faced with a potentially significant R&D problem in melee combat, we chose to refocus our efforts on ranged combat. It also didn't help that players all associated the crowbar with Gordon Freeman, not Alex Vance.
Exactly, that's what I said.
Not data encryption.
It was a Gordon Freeman tool, not Alex Vance. And also, that explains why melee doesn't exist in Half-Life Alyx, because, again, that was a big gripe as well when it first released. There was no melee in the game, and everyone's like, why can't you use crowbar? Why can't you hit things with baseball bats? That kind of stuff. And it's because they said that people were exhibiting a whole load of different swinging behaviors. And they weren't satisfied with it, so they went with the ranged combat. And the ranged combat feels solid in this game, so I'm glad that they did, to be honest. Head crabs crawling around up there. Oh, yeah. I want to hear about this as well.
Alex, look out the window.
Holy crap. That's gotta be the vault.
Yeah. Your dad didn't mention it was floating.
So even if we make it there,
Classic.
We still have to get up to it.
Oh, the cables! Look at all the cables attached to it. All we have to do is follow them.
And break whatever's at the other end.
And down comes the vault. Simple, easy to follow. Yeah, I like this plan.
Okay, so
That's
vault
a lot
view.
of cables.
Because this is breathtaking in VR. Like the actual sense of scale with the vault itself is incredible, and it blew my mind the first time that I saw it. Especially the fact that it's just floating in the air as well. And if you look closely, you can just see lights flashing on it. Really small lights that really show that it's like a bit like when airplanes are in the sky and you can see the tail lights flashing. Kind of gives you that feeling that the object's really far off. And they've done the same here with the flashing lights on those kind of antenna arrays on the side of it, which is incredible. So let's have a little listen to what they say about the vault.
This entire section of the map, from the start of the keycard puzzle up to this room, was added specifically to show the player the vault on its own. Without this little detour, players would otherwise have their first view of the vault at the entrance to the Northern Star Hotel, which was also when they would see their first Combine substation. So much new information all at once led many players to confuse the vault with the substation, or just miss it entirely, so we created this area of the train station to highlight the vault on its own. Even though players are required to enter this room to get the second keycard, they still wouldn't necessarily notice the vault outside, so we added some dialogue with Russell about looking out the window to see it. This may be a bit heavy-handed, but it was necessary to solve the problem of players not recognizing the vault when they saw it later in the game.
Clever bastards. Okay, we've got the blue key card. Ammo. I think there's a bit more ammo around somewhere. Maybe in here. Here we are. Nice, let's head back. Really interesting to hear about the vault. Alright, deal some head crabs now. He didn't jump at all there. I was expecting him to jump.
Have you heard any Combine chatter about Dad escaping?
No, nothing. It's all about sending reinforcements into the quarantine zone.
On the plus side, that means Dad is still on his way back to you. We'd have heard if they recaptured Eli Vance.
And on the downside,
getting to the vault isn't going to get any easier.
Alrighty then. So we've listened to this one about the crowbar. Let's go on to this section. So this is going to be probably telling us a bit more about the training area for grenades, I would have thought. Because this is all about getting you used to the grenades.
Total waste of grenade.
worth it.
Agreed.
Worth it. Because you're worth it. Right, let's load up on grenades. Yes, please. Yes, please. Whoa! Where'd that come from? What? I swear it was like something threw that grenade at me. Oh, total miss. Oh, I got it. You got it.
Heads up, zombie. Look out.
Look out. Anyone else? Too much fun. Way too much fun. One left? Or are we all done? I think we're all done, actually. Right, let's take some for the ride. Is that resin as well? Yay! Nice! How we doing, chat? How's things? Hope you're enjoying a bit of Life Alyx Developer Commentary.
4 shells left.
I mean, it's been interesting, but not everything they're saying is like holding my attention. I'll go in there in a second. What's through here? Ooh.
Two shells left.
A blackhead crab. Oh, missed it. Got it.
Yes.
Nice throw.
Okay, throwing. Here we go.
Although it may seem obvious that throwing would be a trivial interaction to support in VR, a lot of nuanced work is required to get it to feel right. And if we were going to build puzzles like this one, where the player must throw an armed grenade through a high duct, throwing needed to work well. A typical VR game running at 90 frames per second will read the sensor data from the track controllers once per frame. This means the data is read every 11 milliseconds. That may seem like a short time step, but when throwing, a user can easily move their hand 15 centimeters or more in that amount of time. Additionally, the player may release the object by opening their hand or releasing the trigger at any point during their throwing motion. This makes reconstructing the act of throwing a virtual object an interesting signal processing problem. It's up to any given piece of VR software to derive the player's intent from the discretely sampled controller data, and we've learned a lot over the years about what works and what doesn't. In the lab, which we shipped in 2016, we sampled the controller's positional data every 11 milliseconds and used the sampled positions to compute the controller velocity at each time step. We then used an average of the computed velocity and direction over several
This
frames
is really
before
nerdy.
and after the object release to determine the velocity and direction to apply to the thrown object. Although this was functional enough to ship, it didn't always feel consistent, especially if the game's frame rate ever fell below 90 frames per second. Later, in the Index controller tech demo Moondust, we expanded on this algorithm by biasing towards higher velocity data. We also extended the SteamVR software interface to provide the controller's instantaneous velocity and acceleration data from the hardware inertial measurement unit, which is computed on the controller every 2 milliseconds. This meant that we did not have to calculate an estimate from the positions sampled by the engine only every 11 milliseconds as we had done on the lab. This was crucial to providing a more responsive feel, as it meant the throwing calculations were no longer tied to the rendering frame rate. After further experimentation, we arrived at the solution used in Half-Life Alyx, which takes 10 frames that preceded the release of the held object and averages the 3 frames bracketing the peak controller velocity in that time window. We have found that this tends to lead to a better approximation of precisely when the player intended to release a thrown object. This approach resulted in consistent, comfortable throwing, enabling us to rely on players being able to accurately throw grenades or any other objects with confidence.
That went completely over my head. A lot of developer speak in there. A lot of frames per second, problems with tracking. Didn't really understand what he was saying. But yeah, it sounded like a complicated problem to solve, throwing in VR.
Oh wow, check it out. My gun just keeps getting better and better.
You know, Russ, technically, I don't think there's a whole lot of your gun left anymore.
I'll tell you what, let's put that idea on hold for now. We can chat about my gun when you get back.
Yeah, Alex. Is he down? He's down. Hate those guys. They do so much damage with that giant shotgun of theirs. You hurt me. Ouch. Toner puzzle. We've already had some commentary on that. That was right on his feet. Oh, there's another dude coming. So glad I got my laser sight. Oh, okay. He's dealt with then. Missed. Go on. Go on. Hey. Nailed it. Oh, dude up there. There we are. The pool completely jammed up then. I may have panicked a little bit. Didn't see him.
3 shots left.
Ooh, that was a bit intense. I don't ever remember them coming down the stairs like that. Blimey. Right, on to the next one. It reminds me that I still need to finish this game. Limitless, you've not finished this game? How have you not finished this game? Okay, we're near the Northern Star level now. Now, there should be some commentary here, surely. Probably on the way up the stairs here.
Look to the Northern Star.
I am? Why are you saying it like that?
No. The Vortigaunt said, look to the Northern Star to help his friends, which sounds like Vortigaunt nonsense, but I guess it isn't.
Oh, yeah. That does make more sense. That's some sort of Combine substation. They
Combine
generate power and host security
substation.
protocols.
Like the power and security you'd need for a giant vault.
So awesome. Right then, I think this is a good point to kind of stop the stream because my feet are absolutely killing me. Been standing for like 2 hours straight, and my feet are hurting. And I think we're about approaching halfway through the game, so I'm going to come back and finish the developer commentary in the not too distant future. So thanks everyone for joining me. Absolutely appreciated. I hope you enjoyed a bit of this, but we will carry on with it in possibly next week. I'll schedule it, okay? So you guys and girls, you keep safe. Have a good Easter weekend. I may be back streaming possibly on Monday afternoon, around 2 o'clock PM GMT. I want to play a completely new game. There's a few that's come out recently, so I might have to spark up the quest again, and we'll get playing that. But there you go. Anyway, I'm gonna stop stream now. Thanks for being here, and I'll catch you soon. Thank you very much. Bye bye. Bye everyone.